Chapter 2455. This was also one of the tricks used to create hype. First, they would use a black mark to create hype and attract attention. Once they became famous, they would use other means to appear innocent and pitiful on shows to clear their names. Usually, the audience would not be hostile to beautiful people. Hence, the prettier a female artiste was, the easier it was for them to clear their names. However, Qin Zhou quickly calmed down. Having been in this industry for so long, he had seen all kinds of storms. He had seen too many of such tricks, so he did not find it strange. Mu Shi, on the other hand, was furious. When she saw Li Xian open a Weibo account, she was so angry that she almost smashed her tablet. How shameless! This woman is simply a white lotus. She clearly had plastic surgery based on Yun Shishir's features, yet this woman still refuses to admit it. Not only does she refuse to admit it, but she even opened a Weibo account and posted a statement. It's obvious that she wants to use Shishir to create hype. Shishir alone is not enough, she even wants to drag Xingze into this and create hype together. She's aiming for Xingze and Shishir's popularity. I'm about to die from anger. The corners of Qin Zhou's lips twitched as his facial muscles stiffened. Xingze, that rascal, is too ridiculous. Mu Shi asked curiously, is there any reaction from Xingze's side? Is there any movement from his studio? Qin Zhou said coldly, Xingze must remain silent. This is the best way to deal with this crisis. He must deal with scandals that are unfavorable to him coldly. The more he tries to explain and clarify, the more chaotic it will be. Why? As an idol's fan, the fans hope to see Gu Xingze, the person involved in this incident, stand up and give an explanation. However, this explanation can only be valid. Now that Gu Xingze can't give a valid explanation, he can only remain silent. Otherwise, the situation will be even more chaotic. I'm so angry. Mu Shi was about to cry from anger. I've never seen such a shameless woman. In this circle, there are many shameless people. Then, what should we do next? Mu Shi huffed. Don't tell me we're just going to let this woman use Shishir to create hype. Judging from the other company's stance, it's obvious that they're not letting go of Shishir. Qin Zhou also found it troublesome. Although Shishir is not a A-lister now, she's very popular. If she's involved with this woman, it'll only appear degrading. That's why we're not making any moves for now and see how things will develop. That's too. I was bitten by a dog while walking. If I bite it back, it will be very degrading. After Yun's interview with Yun Shishir. However, after they sat down and exchanged a few pleasantries, the editor went straight to the point and brought up Li Xiang. Shishir, what do you think of Li Xiang? You don't know about this? The editor was very surprised. This morning, Qingguang Entertainment published a set of photos on Weibo. The model who went in and out of the hotel with Gu Xingze is called Li Xian. Oh. Yun Shishir nodded. Frowning slightly, she calmly asked, may I ask if this matter has anything to do with this interview? Chapter 2456. The editor was slightly embarrassed and said, Yu and Xingze were voted as the most popular on-screen couple. Previously, during the filming of The Love Diary, the fans have been talking about your chemistry with Xingze. The lucky couple is very popular, isn't it? Even I think that you and Xingze are a good match. You've also mentioned that on-screen couple is only on-screen, so there's no need to magnify it to reality. Xingze is a very outstanding senior. As a junior, I have no right to comment on his personal life. If Li Xian is his lover, I'll also give them my sincere blessings. His flawless answer left everyone dumbfounded. Mu Shi smiled from the side. Let's put this topic aside for now. The main topic of today's interview is Sher's new drama and Lethal Beauty, which is about to be broadcasted on major satellite channels. Let's skip some irrelevant topics. Despite the editor's dissatisfaction, he had no choice but to put this topic aside. After the interview, Mushi said unhappily, Sher, I really feel aggrieved for you. That Li Xian is using you as a springboard to hype herself up. I really can't take it lying down. This is the industry. If you want to establish yourself, you have to learn to face these unspoken rules. With that, she added, we still have a pictorial shoot in the afternoon. Let's go for lunch. Emichim, Yun Sher made an appointment with Qin Zhou and Ji Lin, and the four of them went to a restaurant next to the company for lunch. The atmosphere was low during the meal. Qin Zhou was still scrolling through Weibo, his expression ugly. Even Ji Lin, who had always been exceptionally calm, had his brows tightly knitted together. Clearly, the current situation was not optimistic. Yun Sher ordered noodles, but she kept fiddling with the noodles in her bowl with her chopsticks as if she was chewing wax. Weibo was in an uproar. Li Xian's Weibo post this morning had already reached 150,000 comments. There were countless scolding below, but Li Xian seemed indifferent and did not make any further comments. This was also a common method of creating hype. The more one did not make a statement, the more attention and anger they would attract. Mushi was a little worried. How long will this situation last? Qin Zhou drank a glass of wine in annoyance and put his phone aside. I'm not afraid of ruthless people, but I'm afraid of shameless people. This was the truth. Ji Lin said, let's put this matter aside for now. Take care of yourself. Later, we'll think of some countermeasures. Qin Zhou pondered for a moment and suddenly said, however, if Li Xian insists on creating hype, I don't mind playing along. A glimmer of hope appeared on her face. What do you mean? Qin Zhou replied, she will definitely be using Sher to create hype. Similarly, Sher will also be using her to create more exposure. Yun Sher was silent for a long time. Suddenly, she swallowed a mouthful of noodles and sighed. When Gu Xingze arrived at the studio, it was in a state of chaos. Upon seeing him, they greeted him with trepidation. Master Gu. After he terminated his contract with Qin Zhou, he set up his own studio. Before he came back, because he was banned, many veterans left. Therefore, the public relations aspect of the crisis was extremely weak. Until now, these guys still hadn't come up with a complete plan. Chapter 2457. Gu Xingze was also clear that there was a team behind this. Li Xian's company also wanted to make use of this incident to create hype. It was not easy for a modeling company to produce a celebrity. Most of them were not popular. If the transition was successful, they might be able to get a small role in a script. If the transition was not successful, they could only become the playthings of those rich people. Once the shelf life was over, they could only be eliminated. Some of them would marry rich businessmen, and some would leave the industry. It was not easy to produce Li Xian. He went to his office and closed the door. He suddenly felt upset when he thought of the heated discussion on Weibo. Until now, what bothered him the most was not his reputation, nor was it the impact on his popularity. His mind was filled with Yun Sher's cold and detached gaze. After this incident, what kind of eyes would she use to look at him? He actually cared a lot about what she thought. Would she think of him as a frivolous person? Or would she think of him as the scum of the entertainment industry? He cared a lot. However, there had been no news from Yun Sher. With Qin Zhou in charge, she would definitely choose to bide her time. However, he had seen Yun Sher's live interview in the morning. She seemed to be very indifferent about this incident, even indifferent. She had completely distanced herself from it. He actually felt a little lonely. In the afternoon, Yun Shishir had a set of pictorials to shoot. This set of pictorials was specially invited by the magazine. Moreover, the country's top photographer would be in charge of the overall situation. Yun Shishir and the photographer talked for a while. The final result of the discussion was that they would use mermaids as the script and concept to shoot a set of underwater pictorials for the magazine. The styling team brought a few clothes. One was white, and the other was red. The photographer chose the red one for her. He said that the red one would definitely look amazing in the photos. The makeup artist styled her soft black hair and put on heavy retro makeup. Her facial features were very soft and had a classic charm. Therefore, retro makeup was very suitable for her, especially her red lips. It was February and the weather was still a little cold. Although they chose a pool with a constant temperature, Yun Shishir was still shivering when she went into the water in a light dress. The photographer let her get used to the water temperature and then followed her into the water. Shooting in bed was a test of one's figure. What was amazing was that Yun Shishir's performance was excellent. She followed the photographer's instructions and made many seductive poses underwater. She was as enchanting and beautiful as the daughter of the sea god. The dark blue water and the bright red dress complemented each other. Yun Shishir's exquisite makeup, black hair, silky eyes, and eyelashes were intertwined with her hair. When she looked back and smiled, her lips were red and her teeth were white. She was very seductive, yet she had the aura of a queen. At the end of the shoot, the photographer held the camera as if he had found a treasure and browsed through the photos one by one. He was so excited that he was speechless. Yun Shishir, who was floating in the water, smiled knowingly at his praise. Shishir, it's been hard on you. After the shoot, Mushi immediately took a blanket and draped it over her. She then helped her to the changing room and hurriedly changed her wet clothes. Chapter 24:58. The cameraman praised you for your good performance. I took a few looks at the photos. The effect is really great. The effect is good, but I also paid quite a price. Yun Shishir said softly, although the water is at a constant temperature, it's also very cold. I'm freezing to death. Especially after coming out of the pool, when the wind blew slightly, it was bone-chilling. There was still a show to record at night. Just thinking about it gave Yun Shishir a splitting headache and made her feel dizzy. The show was a first-tier satellite TV variety show with the ACE ratings, A-Star Alliance. In order to cater to the audience, there were many small segments about physical fitness. Most of the guests who participated in the show were there to promote their movies or TV series. This time, the production team of Lethal Beauty wanted to promote the new drama, so the main creators, including Hua Jin, were participating in the show. Yun Shishir was originally mentally prepared, but when she arrived at the scene, the production team said that there was a segment where they would have to wear very heavy sumo wrestling props. Different celebrities would be divided into two groups and compete against each other. When Yun Shishir saw the props, her eyes dimmed even more. It was so heavy. It must be very heavy to wear. Yun Shishir went on stage in a daze. During the recording of the show, when it came to the games segment, she wore the sumo wrestling outfit and appeared on stage. She looked very heavy but also very cute. The celebrities were divided into two groups. Yun Shishir realized that most of the celebrities in her group were thinner and weaker, while the other group's celebrities were more strong. She protested. There's an imbalance in strength. We're all old and weak. It's not fair. Her protest caused the audience to roar with laughter. Hua Jin was in the same group as her. When he heard that, he was dealt a huge blow and protested, "What do you mean old and weak? I protest." Yun Shishir kicked him to the ground. The audience roared with laughter again. Even the MC was amused by Yun Shishir's variety show talent. Then do we need to change the lineup? Hua Jin said, "No need. Our Shurshur is our team's carry. With Shurshur as our trump card, we'll definitely win. Yun Shurshur felt that she had been unjustly implicated. At the start of the game, the host announced on the spot that the celebrity who won the game would donate 5 million yuan to the charity organization in the name of the team. This was a great honor. Yun Shurshur originally didn't want to continue fighting, but when she heard that there was such a meaningful reward, her fighting spirit was ignited. In the end, what made everyone not know whether to laugh or cry was that everyone thought that Hua Jin's "Shurshur is our trump card" was just a joke. Who would have thought that Shurshur's fighting strength was on the verge of exploding? She rampaged all the way, and even a male guest with a more muscular body was pushed out of the circle by her. Everyone was dumbfounded. At this time, only Hua Jin and Yun Shurshur were left in the arena. Yun Shurshur looked proud and arrogant as she asked, "Who else wants to fight?" The host immediately gave her the title of Desperate 13th Lady. Hua Jin stood up and revealed, "Don't underestimate Shurshur. She ate 2 of my meals on set." Ha 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 ha. The guests were convulsing with laughter. Xiao Yichen and Yu Yu were overjoyed as they watched the live broadcast. Ha ha ha. Mommy is so funny. Xiao Yichen said, "Do you have to fight so hard? You don't even have a ladylike image anymore. Mommy isn't ladylike in the first place, okay? If Mommy hears you, she'll beat you up." Chapter 24:59. When Yun Shurshur returned home after filming, Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen immediately welcomed her. "Madam 13 is home." When Yun Shurshur heard this nickname, her eyes twitched and her face darkened. She knew that the 2 little guys must have watched the live broadcast of her show. She said angrily, "Don't give Mommy a nickname." Yu Yu said pitifully, "Mommy, I'm innocent. The host gave you this nickname, not Yu Yu." Seeing how pitiful he looked, Yun Shurshur could not help but pinch his cheeks and ask, "Is Daddy home?" "Yeah. In the study." When Yun Shurshur walked into the study, she saw Mu Yaja sitting in front of the computer and staring at the screen intently. She walked over curiously and saw that he was watching the replay of her show with great interest. It happened to play the scene where she was playing a game. She was wearing a cumbersome sumo suit and charging into the enemy camp like a bull. She immediately blushed and blocked the screen. She said gloomily, "Stop watching. This is for the show's effect. I'm not that barbaric." Mu Yaja smiled and grabbed her wrist, pulling her into his arms. "Why are you back so late? The show should have finished filming a long time ago." "Yeah, I had supper with the crew after filming." "What did you eat?" "Seafood porridge." Yun Shurshur suddenly thought of something and asked, "Have you seen Weibo?" "Weibo?" Mu Yaja was stunned. He quickly realized what she was talking about and replied, "Yeah, I saw it. I saw it. It was very exciting." Yun Shurshur said pitifully, "Don't get the wrong idea. The woman in the photos in the Weibo post this morning is not me." The first thing she did when she got home was to explain things to him. She had left in a hurry in the morning. If she explained, it would seem too deliberate. Although she felt that this incident had nothing to do with her, she also knew that Mu Yaja could tell at a glance that the woman in the photos was not her. But after all, it involved her and Gu Xingze. When Li Xianer hyped up the news, it would inevitably lead to other media outlets hyping up the scandal between her and Gu Xingze. She was worried that he would overthink when he saw those messy reports in hype. Moreover, she did not want to implicate Gu Xingze again. This man's methods had always been ruthless. If she angered him, she might be banned again. Mu Yaja grabbed her chin and kissed her fair cheek. He hummed again, but this time, his tone was full of tenderness. "I know, you don't have to explain yourself. I'm afraid you'll think too much." She didn't care much about this incident, but she cared more about his feelings. Mu Yaja said, "I'm not as stupid as you think." "All right. It's good that you're not thinking too much. Yun Shishir heaved a sigh of relief and slumped in his arms. I'm so tired today. Dearest hubby, can you massage my shoulders? Your shoulders are sore. Mu Yaja was nervous for a moment. Seeing her tired face, he couldn't help but feel sorry for her. He immediately lifted his hand and massaged her shoulders obediently. He was quite strong. Yun Shishir mumbled, be gentler. Yeah. He was also afraid that he would hurt her petite body, so he used less strength. Here, okay. And here, a little to the left, yeah. Use a little more strength, it's so sore. Chapter 2460. Yun Shishir was able to order a certain man around with ease. His grip was just right and she couldn't help but let out a few soft moans of pleasure. He saw that her intoxicated look was just too moving, too cute, and he couldn't help but lightly peck her cheek. This intimate action was bumped into by the two little lads who had snuck into the study. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen were the best at catching adulterers. Mu Yaja's face froze. Yu Yu's eyes widened in surprise. Then, she ran over enviously and complained, Daddy, you're biased. My back was itchy just now, but you didn't even want to scratch it. Xiao Yichen said enviously, Mommy seems to be very comfortable. Daddy, you should massage my shoulders too. Yun Shishir's eyes twitched and she said, Mommy is very tired after working for the whole day, okay? Humph. Yu Yu placed her hands on her hips and said self-righteously, Yu Yu has been doing housework for the whole day, so she's very tired too, okay? When Xiao Yichen heard this, he also placed his hands on his hips and said unreasonably, Xiao Yichen has been playing for the whole day, so his shoulders are sore too. Yu Yu and Yun Shishir were silent. They glared at him in disdain and said, You think you're in the right after playing for the whole day? Yu Yu immediately took action. She cupped her fists and cracked her knuckles. Mu Yichen, you still have the cheek to say that. You only know how to play games when I asked you to mop the floor. You want a massage, right? I'll let you have a taste of my fist. As she said this, she grabbed Xiao Yichen's collar. Xiao Yichen was so shocked that he cried out, Yu Yu, you're a bully. Then, he ran out of the study. Yu Yu chased after him. Mu Yichen, you big idiot. Don't run. Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja stared dumbfoundedly at the two boys making a ruckus. They stared blankly for a moment before looking at each other and laughing. They really are two living treasures. Yun Shishir said with emotion. With these two clowns at home, there was no need to worry about loneliness. Sometimes, when she came back from work feeling exhausted, these two little lads always had the ability to heal her heart. With just a few words, even if it was just a look, they would always be able to sweep away the haze in her heart. Do you feel better? He asked softly, the gentleness in his eyes warmed her heart. Yun Shishir nodded and said, much better. My shoulders aren't so sore anymore. Thank you, husband. Mu Yaja gently rested his chin on the side of her shoulder and quietly hugged her. In this quiet moment, he only wanted to quietly hug her and gently kiss her. His attachment to her always showed itself unconsciously. Sometimes, even he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He even found it unbelievable. He originally thought that after getting married, their feelings would be like those of married couples, going from intense to dull. However, this feeling didn't fade at all. Instead, it became even more intense and difficult to suppress. What Yun Shishir didn't know was that even though he looked so calm when he married her, his heart was like a blooming firework. His feelings for her filled his chest, and he was deeply in love with her. At that time, there were 4 words that kept repeating in his mind: he was married. He was married. Yes, he had a home. When he returned home, he had a wife and a pair of adorable sons. This was a life that he could only look forward to. This joy still hadn't faded even now. Chapter 2461. At moments in corners where she couldn't see, he would always secretly take out the marriage certificate as if he was possessed and look at it again and again. He would stare at the photo of the two people leaning against each other in a daze. Unknowingly, a smile would always appear in his eyes. If Yun Shishir knew that he always carried the marriage certificate with him, she would definitely have a whole new level of respect for this man. Even Lu Jinyu had seen it a few times. In the office, when he was free from work, he would take out the small red book from his pocket and look at it. Lu Jinyu secretly said to Jiang Xin, "Boss seems to be possessed by something." When Jiang Xin found out, he secretly gave Mu Yaja the title of a wife-slave behind his back. Wife-slave. Lu Jinyu shook his head and said, "You didn't see boss smiling foolishly at the marriage certificate. It scared me." Jiang Xin was in a mess. Mu Yaja didn't seem to realize that ever since they got married, he seemed to be becoming more and more of a wife-slave. Yun Shishir was originally worried that after they got married, this man would think that since they were already married, he wouldn't cherish her anymore. But what about the opposite? He cherished her more and more. Because he was always thinking about her. She was his wife, his legitimate wife. If he didn't pamper her, who else would pamper her? It was precisely because of this awareness that Mu Yaja displayed the demeanor of a wife-slave that Lu Jinyu and Jiang Xin were taken aback. He also understood that the marriage certificate wasn't just a piece of paper. They were clearly married, but they were still like young men and women in their honeymoon period. Even though they had only parted in the morning and hadn't seen each other for a day, they already missed each other very much. During the afternoon meeting, even though he was sitting in the conference room, he seemed distracted. Hence, he specially returned home early to wait for her return. Where was the husband-gazing stone? However, the husband of the husband-gazing stone was referring to his wife. Now that he was holding her in his arms, when her petite body filled his chest, his heart suddenly calmed down. It was as if this was the only way he could feel the real her and her warmth. Yun Shishir also thought to herself that after they got married, a certain man seemed to be more clingy to her. Was this a good thing? At this moment, Mu Yaja also had the same thought in his heart. When will my wife give birth to a little princess for me? Hubby, You said, Yun Shishir suddenly said awkwardly, is the plastic surgery technology really so advanced now? Mu Yaja was still immersed in his fantasies about his little princess, so he only vaguely heard the words, plastic surgery. He asked curiously, plastic surgery? Yes. It was the Weibo post from this morning. The woman in the photo was called Li Xiener. Qin Zhou searched for her photo and she really looked like me. Qin Zhou said that she must have gotten plastic surgery based on me. But can plastic surgery really make you look like me? If the original mold is similar, it's not impossible to make it exactly the same. Upon hearing this, Yun Shishir's expression became even uglier. Her face had been used as a template, and then a woman who looked so much like her had appeared out of nowhere. No matter how she thought about it, she felt uncomfortable and even awkward. The Weibo post from this morning. Chapter 2462. You also think that the woman looks like me, right? Mu Yaja shook his head and said confidently, how can I mistake my old skin for someone else? I don't think they look alike at all. How is that possible? Yun Shishir obviously did not believe him. Qin Zhou, Yu Yu, and Xiao Chen thought it was me at first glance. I'm the one who shares a bed with you every day. How can I mistake my wife for someone else? Mu Yaja said, besides, although they look alike, their temperament is obviously different. Temperament? Yes. She doesn't have your temperament. Therefore, even if she has the same looks, she doesn't look outstanding. It was 30% looks and 70% temperament. A person's temperament was more important than their looks. Yun Shishir's temperament was very good. Just like her name, Yun Shishir was poetic, elegant, and elegant. Yun Shishir's heart instantly brightened up when she heard this. She turned around and pinched his cheeks with a smile. You really know how to talk. Regardless of whether he was coaxing her or telling the truth, she was almost dizzy from his words. However, this beautiful mood didn't last for too long. The next day, Li Xian's management company went all out to create hype. In Qin Zhou's words, it was simply crazy. Good move. What a good move. Qin Zhou slammed a stack of files on the table and said angrily, this Li Xian is really shameless. What's wrong? Yun Shishir was putting on her makeup when she saw Qin Zhou's angry eyes. She was a little confused. What's wrong with Li Xian? The management company she signed with signed a publicity team the night before yesterday. This publicity team is really good at creating hype. They actually posted Li Xian's photos online. Isn't this what you want? Yun Shishir asked curiously, haven't you been looking for photos of her before her plastic surgery? I did find a photo of her before her plastic surgery, but Yi's released a press release before Huan Yu did. The difference is huge. If I release a statement, I will guide the public opinion in a direction that is beneficial to you. However, the hype team had purposely chosen a few selfies that looked better before her plastic surgery. Then, as soon as they released the article, Li Xian came out to deny that she had undergone plastic surgery. She even said that she wanted to go to the hospital for a DNA test. Then, she said that she wanted to sue the Weibo media who had slandered her. Their way of praising and trampling on her was really top-notch. Just the topic of plastic surgery alone is enough for Li Xian to hype up for a while. Isn't she afraid of getting a bad reputation by doing this? So what if he has a bad reputation? Who would care about that little bit of reputation? As long as one was famous, regardless of whether the reputation was good or bad, the more outlandish and shameless one was, the more attention the public would pay. The more attention there was, the more exposure there would be. Li Xian just exposed this hype yesterday, but this morning, there were many satellite channels looking for her to do a show. This is the effect of hype. In the entertainment industry, there were many female celebrities who did not hesitate to make a fool of themselves by deliberately making disgusting comments to gain exposure and fame. There were also many female celebrities who were more direct and became famous overnight. The entertainment industry was in a mess because of these immoral celebrities. After all, fame and wealth were often unscrupulous. Chapter 2463. Qin Zhou said angrily, Shishir, you've been bitten by that mad dog, Li Xian, and she won't let you go. Didn't you see her Weibo update this morning? Her selfie is exactly the same as the selfie you posted 2 nights ago. She's obviously imitating you. Yun Shishir immediately opened it to take a look. Sure enough. She had posted a selfie on Weibo 2 nights ago. She was wearing a hat and a creamy yellow outfit, with one hand supporting her chin and a reserved smile on her lips. Li Xian, on the other hand, copied her selfie this morning and posted a selfie. She was wearing the same outfit, and even the background was extremely similar. She did not know how she did it. Yun Shishir was also a little angry. She cursed angrily at the side. This Li Xian is really a bitch. I'm so annoyed just looking at her. She's probably sure that we can't do anything to her. Does this Li Xian have a big sugar daddy backing her? Qin Zhou said unhappily, even if she didn't before, now that this matter has happened and she's famous, there will be a long line of sugar daddies who want her as their mistress. Early in the morning, Yun Shishir's character was ruined by this woman's bad publicity. 2 days later, Yun Shishir's underwater photos were published on the magazine's official Weibo account, and the behind-the-scenes footage was also made into a short video. Yun Shishir immediately saw the post-production blockbuster. The images were exquisite, and the lighting was very good. In the dark blue water, a bright red dress was seductive in the water. There was one photo that she especially liked. She was submerged in the water, and the sunlight shone through the water, reflecting the splendor of the waves. She was wearing a red dress and was facing the water. Her black hair was curled up, and the hem of her dress was charming. On her fair face, her eyebrows were picturesque, her eyes were seductive, her lips were red, and her teeth were white. When she looked back, she was seductive. There was also a shot of the back view. Her figure was enchanting, like a mermaid diving into the depths of the water. She wore a pure white dress and held a bunch of alluring roses in her hands. She lowered her eyes and gently sniffed the roses. She was beautiful and enchanting. After the light and shadow treatment, her white dress was like snow, and her skin was like porcelain. The roses set off her black hair and red lips, and the visual effect was extremely stunning. Very few female celebrities had attempted to do underwater photo shoots. Yoon Shirshir's underwater photo shoots had stunned countless people. As soon as the photo was released, it attracted the attention of many fans. "Oh my God! I didn't know you could take photos like this. Shirshir looks really enchanting like this. Just like mermaids. She's so charming. I like the one in the red dress the most. She has black hair and a red dress. She looks so flirtatious underwater. Too beautiful." A few days after the photo shoots were published, Lee Hsien-er's Weibo also published a set of photo shoots. However, what surprised people was that she actually imitated Yoon Shirshir's underwater photo shoots and took a set of photo shoots. What was even more infuriating was that whether it was the composition, the shooting posture, the clothes, the style, or the makeup, they were all exactly the same. The traces of imitation couldn't be more obvious. When put together, it was impossible to tell which set was taken by Yoon Shirshir and which set was taken by Lee Hsien-er. Chin Zhou had been paying attention to Lee Hsien-er's Weibo. When he clicked on this set of photo shoots, he was about to explode with anger. This Lee Hsien-er was clearly determined to imitate Yoon Shirshir to the end. Chapter 2464. However, Lee Hsien-er's photo shoot was not as exquisite as Yoon Shirshir's. It was a little rough and the lighting effects were not satisfactory. After all, it was not taken by a famous photographer, so the details were not handled well. However, it was more than enough to fool a group of fans. When Yoon Shirshir's fans saw this, they were filled with righteous indignation and scolded her for being shameless. However, Lee Hsien-er seemed to enjoy this kind of attention. That morning, when she opened Weibo and saw that the photos that had been secretly taken after she left the hotel that night had been published on the website, she was shocked. Early in the morning, she was summoned to the company. She was trembling with fear. After this incident, she was worried that the company would ask about it. However, to her surprise, the person who summoned her was the company's senior management. The senior management went straight to the point and said that the photos had been secretly taken by the paparazzi that the company had hired. He also told her that the company had the intention to package her, hype her up, and turn her into a professional actress. Lee Hsien-er was a little stunned by the sudden surprise. Like many young girls who started out as models, she had graduated from an unknown art school. Of course, like those students who started out in the modeling industry, she had worked in public relations during her university years. Of course, she only worked on the stage and never left it. At that time, she was still in school and the discipline was quite strict. She used this job to save some money. After graduating from the art school, she came to the bustling metropolis, Beijing, alone. She planned to work hard towards her dream of acting. Her features were not outstanding. At that time, Gu Xingze and Yoon Shirshir's movie had not yet been released, but the photos had already been released. She was a die-hard fan of Gu Xingze. Therefore, she copied Yoon Shirshir's looks and traveled to Korea. There, she underwent a total of 3 operations to look like her. The plastic surgery was very successful. With her outstanding appearance, she quickly signed a contract with a modeling company. Of course, this modeling company was not considered popular and had nothing to do with the catwalk. When she was not famous, she could only shoot some simple print ads and get some meager pay. The turning point of her fate was probably when she met Gu Xingze at that private gathering. At that time, Gu Xingze had just been banned from the entertainment industry. All his acting contracts had been cancelled, and his career had hit rock bottom. When they met, he seemed to be in a bad mood. He had drunk some wine and was in a daze. She deliberately approached him and tried to please him. Perhaps it was because of her appearance, but he didn't seem to reject her approach. Everything that happened next seemed to be logical. He was a normal man and naturally had the most primitive desires of a man. However, there was always a woman in his heart. Because of this woman, he instinctively resisted other women. However, Li Xianer, who looked like her, appeared at the right time and broke the spell. Perhaps he wanted to find a substitute to comfort himself, but he chose her. However, this relationship had nothing to do with romance or any feelings. At the beginning of this relationship, he coldly and cruelly made it very clear that between them, it was just a transaction. The money and the goods were settled. He needed her, and as the price, he would give her a large sum of money. Chapter 2465. However, he rarely looked for her and rarely touched her. Many times, he stopped abruptly at the crucial moment. His desires in certain areas were very weak. Or perhaps, he would only think of looking for her when he really needed her and couldn't control himself. It was just that each of them wanted what they wanted, that was all. As for women other than Yun Shishir, he was indifferent. He didn't have much hope for women. Perhaps, in the future, he would follow his family's wishes and marry a wife. Or perhaps, he would stay single for the rest of his life. He would only ask for warmth when he needed it. In this aspect, he couldn't be more negative. During that time, he was muddle-headed and lost. As a result, he didn't even notice the hidden dangers around him. The company's higher-ups quickly noticed the relationship between Li Xianer and Gu Xingze and were overjoyed. Especially Li Xianer's manager. She wasn't really a manager, but she could be considered the person in charge. After a discussion with the company's higher-ups, they came up with a series of hype plans without the knowledge of the two people. What a joke. No one dared to imagine that Li Xianer, who looked like an unknown young model, would have a relationship with the superstar, Gu Xingze. No matter what the relationship was, as long as she had a little bit of contact with Gu Xingze, she would have extraordinary hype capital. This kind of hype capital meant unimaginable exposure and popularity. Ever since Ease was established, they had rarely been able to cultivate any truly famous celebrities. After all, it was a third-rate agency. Even if they had Mekong as their backing, Mekong was still a modeling agency that mainly dealt in peaches. Their resources would only be given to the artists under them. Therefore, Ease had never produced any A-list celebrities. Li Xianer would probably be the one to break the record. Having a famous artist under them might be a breakthrough. All of this was thanks to Gu Xingze. The company had a showdown with Li Xianer and gave her a contract. As long as she signed it, it meant that she had signed a life and death contract with the company. She had to obey the company's arrangements. The higher-ups had clearly told her that they would be arranging a series of publicity campaigns for her. For this reason, the company had spent a huge sum of money to hire a team that specialized in publicity campaigns. They would use her and Gu Xingze to create a series of publicity campaigns. The publicity campaigns required her cooperation. However, in order to gain popularity and exposure, she would be subjected to a lot of curses and insults from her fans. This was something that she had to endure in order to become famous. If she could endure it, the company would put all their eggs in one basket and turn her into a professional celebrity. In the future, she might be able to act in movies, commercials, television shows, and cooperate with many A-list celebrities. If she worked hard enough and endured enough hardship, she could also be on equal footing with real A-list celebrities in the future, such as Yoon Shusher and Yang Mi. When Lee Sienna heard this, she was extremely moved. Her heart was beating very fast, like thunder, and boiling hot. In the entertainment industry, there were different grades and ranks. At the top of the pyramid were A-list international celebrities, such as Han Yuyen and Gu Xingze. A-list and B-list celebrities who were not internationally famous, such as Lee Juxian, Yang Mi, Yoon Shusher, and C-list celebrities like Lin Ji. Chapter 2466. She didn't have any works or anything. She could only hope to gain the favor of a rich man. To put it bluntly, she was just a high-class prostitute. If she was lucky, she could marry into a rich family and become a rich man's wife with her looks and seduction skills that she had learned in this industry. Such a glamorous dream was something that few could achieve. She had always envied Yoon Shusher for being able to become a professional actress and act with Gu Xingze. The company's offer was extremely tempting because the company was also ambitious. They hoped to use her to open up the entertainment industry. If she became famous, they would be able to get some resources through her. Ease lacked these resources too much. Hence, they were very ambitious. However, Lee Sienna still had some concerns in her heart. She was still a little embarrassed. She said worriedly, "It's not very good to do this, is it? Isn't this equivalent to using Xingze?" Use? A few of the executives laughed. "Silly girl, in this industry, it's all about using each other. You step on me, I step on you. Whoever is more ruthless will get the upper hand. Use? Who isn't using each other? Moreover, aren't you obviously setting up a monument to your chastity? Didn't you get plastic surgery based on Yoon Shusher's face? Aren't you just delusional about using Yoon Shusher's fame to help you overcome obstacles in this industry?" Their sharp words were aggressive. Lee Sienna couldn't avoid it. She lowered her head in shame. "Moreover, I think that Gu Xingze likes you quite a lot. He treats you so well. This little bit of resources shouldn't be a problem for him. After all, haven't you slept with him?" Lee Sienna's face turned even redder. Slept with him? It was only 3 times. One of those times was when Gu Xingze was drunk. She was obsessed with seducing him and getting close to him. After that, it seemed like there was no more. His need for her was only to call her over and quietly stay by his side. She deliberately seduced him and even deliberately wore very sexy lingerie. However, he seemed to be indifferent. Sometimes, if she went overboard, he would treat her coldly and not look for her for a long time. She stammered, "He and I actually don't have such a deep relationship. It's not as ambiguous as you say, silly girl. In this industry, Gu Xingze is famous for his abstinence. Ever since his debut, he's never had a woman by his side. Even if there's a scandal, it's always the woman who's thrown herself at him to create hype. He doesn't care about creating hype and rarely finds a partner in bed. You're probably the first one, right?" What did this mean? This meant that Gu Xingze still had some feelings for her. In other words, you must be special in his heart. It was special. Otherwise, would he have hugged you so brazenly to the hotel? There are so many paparazzi waiting for him. He did this because he didn't have his guard up against you. So, don't you think you're special? When Lee Sienna heard this, her heart beat like thunder. She was even a little bit overjoyed. I'm special. She was special. Was that really the case? All this while, she had always thought that this was just a transaction. Chapter 2467. Besides, do you know how Yoon Shusher debuted? When she first debuted, she wasn't very famous. Gu Xingze gave her his top manager and supported her. He even used his fame and resources to help her get to the top. This shows that he is very generous to the woman he loves. Although you aren't Yun Shishir, you had a relationship with him before. It's not a big deal for him to give you some resources. Lee Seong-er signed the contract in a daze, feeling a little uneasy. She was like an evil demon who was at the mercy of the gods and demons. That night, Gu Xingze called and asked directly, Lee Seong-er, are you crazy? Lee Seong had expected the superstar to call her at this juncture of the hype, but she did not expect him to speak in a foul and furious tone. She could not help but feel uneasy when he called her in a fit of rage. After receiving the long-awaited call, her heart started to beat faster in the face of his questioning tone. She didn't know what to do. While she didn't know what to do, Gu Xingze gave her a stern warning, are you trying to use me to get to the top? Who gave you the right to do that? Gu Xingze was obviously frustrated. He scolded her sternly, before this, I remember making it clear to you that we have nothing to do with money. Other than that, you're not allowed to have any other ideas. Nothing to do with money. Am I a product? Do you think I'm a product? Lee Seong-er choked with sobs. Especially when she heard the words, nothing to do with money. Why? Aren't you? Gu Xingze retorted, I thought you knew your place very well. Xingze. Lee Seong-er said bitterly, I didn't want to create hype today. After I left the hotel, I went straight home. I didn't hire the paparazzi. It really isn't. What difference does it make whether it's you or not? Right now, you're the one who's causing me a lot of trouble. Gu Xingze was beginning to realize just how dangerous this woman was. He had nothing to say about using him. It was not worthwhile for him to lower himself to the same level as this small fry. But this Lee Seong-er's way of creating hype was obviously aimed at Yun Shishir and him. His original intention was to not disturb Yun Shishir's life. What she did was too much. He could condone his own depravity, but he couldn't condone other women using his name to hurt that woman. Lee Seong-er was on the verge of tears. No matter how stupid she was, she could tell what Gu Xingze was trying to protect with this phone call. He didn't care if his popularity would be affected by this hype, nor did he care how others would view his private life. What he cared about was that her way of creating hype had disturbed Yun Shishir. She didn't understand. In terms of looks, she had done plastic surgery to look like Yun Shishir. When she saw the interview, it seemed like Yun Shishir didn't care about Gu Xingze at all. But she was willing to give up anything for him. Even if it was just a word from him, she was willing to give up on creating hype. But a phone call shattered her infatuation. Chapter 2468. Before this phone call, she had happily thought that she had some special feelings for this man. She had high hopes, but all she got was his anger and questioning. Lee Seong-er was completely dumbfounded. The most heartbreaking thing wasn't his questioning, but his protection of Yun Shishir. It was obvious that he valued his own reputation. That Yun Shishir, what right did she have? Why was he so obsessed with her when he knew that he couldn't have her? Lee Seong couldn't figure it out. What was the scariest thing for a woman? It wasn't losing to a woman, but losing to a woman who couldn't be bothered to fight with her. This Yun Shishir didn't even care about Gu Xingze. Why was Gu Xingze so devoted to her in the end? Xingze. Actually, I'm not greedy. I didn't mean to use you to create hype. It's just that the company arranged a series of plans for me, so I could only follow them. I signed the contract with them in a daze. The company created hype, so I had to cooperate. Lee Seong-er suddenly thought of something. As if possessed, she stared straight at the wall and gripped her phone tightly. Besides, even if it's just creating hype, I don't think I went overboard, did I? Xingze, didn't you help Yun Shishir get to her current position? When she first debuted, she wasn't popular and was still a newcomer. Huan Yu packaged her to create a scandal with you and helped her get to her current position. Then it shouldn't matter if you give me some resources, right? I'm not greedy. As long as you give me a little of Yun Shishir's resources, just a small portion, it'll be enough. I'm not greedy. I just want to be a professional actress. Gu Xingze was silent for a long time. When he opened his mouth again, his voice was even colder. Li Xiener, I advise you not to try to guess my intentions or negotiate with me. Remember this. You should know the limits of our relationship. I'm never stingy with what I owe you. However, don't covet what doesn't belong to you in the first place. Yun Shishir, this woman is not someone you can scheme against, let alone offend. The reason why she was able to become famous was definitely not because she had good resources. She had the ability to do so. I've already made my stance very clear. If you stop now, I'll let bygones be bygones. But if you still refuse to realize your error. Gu Xingze suddenly changed the topic and said coldly, even if you are praised to the top, I will still beat you down to the bottom. You and I are already done. Let's part on good terms. Don't make things too ugly. I'm officially informing you now that from now on, we have nothing to do with each other. Also, if you still don't respect yourself, I don't mind using my methods. With that, Gu Xingze hung up the phone. Li Xiener held the phone and stared blankly at the bare wall. She loosened her grip and the phone fell to the ground with a loud thud. After hearing Gu Xingze's words, she almost broke down. His expectations and the little bit of joy he had in his heart had all been swept away. It turned out that she wasn't special in his heart. She thought that she was special, but she was just a substitute in his eyes. Chapter 2469. Li Xiener was so angry that she wanted to go crazy. She stood in the room and wanted to throw everything she could see on the ground as if that was the only way to appease her anger. Stop. How could that be? If he had such an attitude, then there was no harm in her smashing a pot that had nothing to lose. Anyway, she had already signed the contract. If she were to break the contract, the penalty for breaching the contract would be immeasurable. Since he had already said those harsh words, her heart was completely dead. Therefore, she was not afraid at all. If he wanted to attack her, then she might as well let him. Even if she knew that the consequences of being stubborn would be tragic. She no longer cared about anything. Who asked her to be filled with resentment and anger at this moment? Yun Shishir felt like she was being pestered by a disgusting woman. Ever since that day, Ease had boldly and decisively launched their hype campaign. There seemed to be no signs of stopping. In fact, the situation was getting more and more intense, and there seemed to be a lot of hype going on. Li Xiener's Weibo updates gradually became more frequent. No matter what she posted, the following selfies always showed signs of imitating Yun Shishir. She deliberately trimmed her hairstyle and used the same color as Yun Shishir's lipstick in the latest photo shoot. She also took a selfie with the same brand of mascara in the print beauty advertisement that Yun Shishir endorsed. The worst was when Yun Shishir and Gu Xingze's new drama started filming. The media followed and reported on it, and there were constant reports from the set. Yun Shishir's exclusive car in the production team was a Volkswagen Golf GTI. Not long after, Li Xiener posted a selfie of herself leaning against the Volkswagen Golf GTI. It was obvious that she was trying to ride on Yun Shishir's popularity. Yun Shishir thought that Li Xiener's hype campaign would not last long. However, she did not expect Li Xiener to be so persistent in this matter. It seemed like she was going to continue imitating her until the end. Rather than calling it an imitation, it was more like role-playing, right? Yun Shishir sat in the makeup room and quietly scrolled through Li Xiener's Weibo. Suddenly, she lamented, "I've never seen such a shameless woman." Hua Jin raised his eyebrows and said, "I've seen a lot of them." In this circle, the more women like Li Xiang were able to grasp an opportunity, the more they would be undaunted by setbacks. A woman like this was very ambitious. No matter how badly she was slandered, no matter how much she was bombarded, it was useless. Even if she was shameless, she had to become famous. To an artist, exposure was as important as life. After all, her youth is limited. Yun Shishir put down her phone and quietly washed her nail polish with nail polish remover. Her gaze was a little absent-minded. Qin Zhou was also frowning. He did not have any constructive measures. Ji Lin said that Li Xian, her and Yis were like two lazy dogs. They were shameless and unafraid of boiling water. Even if they were competing in terms of publicity, Yis was simply crazy when it came to hyping things up. Even Qin Zhou had to admit defeat. It was obvious that they wanted to use the company's resources to promote Li Xian, to the top. If they did not achieve their goal, they would not give up. Chapter 2470. The crew had already started filming. The original novel was called Extreme Youth, and the name of the TV series was also tentatively set. After half a month of training, Yun Shishir immediately started filming. At the same time, the post-production of Lethal Beauty was initially completed. It was officially broadcast on a first-tier satellite TV channel. The TV rights of Lethal Beauty were exclusively bought by Beijing Central Satellite TV. Yun Shishir's heart was beating fast. She played a vicious female supporting role in Lethal Beauty. In the series, in order to get the male lead played by Hua Jin, she was unscrupulous, ruthless, and scheming against the female lead. A standard femme fatale with a ruthless heart. Therefore, when Lethal Beauty was officially broadcast, she was also frightened. After the first 3 episodes, she dared not open her Weibo to look at the fans' comments, let alone the fans' comments on the forum. They would definitely be vicious comments. In the first 3 episodes, she played a female supporting role in the series, Qin Yuyan, which attracted a lot of hatred. Before Qin Changle's rebirth, Qin Yuyan seduced the male lead and married into the royal family. She fed Qin Changle sterilization drugs, and she was pregnant with the royal heir and gave birth to a prince for the male lead. Immediately after, she was conferred the title of empress because of her son. Using the royal heir and the male lead's favor, she was ruthless and ruthless. She schemed everywhere and forced Qin Changle into the cold palace. She gouged out her eyes and broke her bones. Finally, she tampered with the imperial edict and gave her a 3-foot white silk, forcing Qin Changle to commit suicide. Yun Shishir initially chose to play this role because compared to Qin Changle, Qin Yuyan's character image was more vivid. Qin Changle's character design was too monotonous. The core of the script was the word revenge. Her rebirth was dedicated to revenge. But Qin Yuyan was different. She was also a naive girl who loved someone wholeheartedly. Later, her family fell and was bullied. She used all means and schemes to seize power. Step by step, she became the empress. If Qin Changle hadn't been reborn and had the memory of her previous life, even 10 Qin Changless might not be Qin Yuyan's opponent. Yun Shishir felt that this role was too cool. How could he think of so many tricks? Especially the part about tampering with the imperial edict, it was too amazing. Qin Yuyan ordered her confidant to tamper with the imperial edict and bestow Qin Changle with a 3-foot white silk. This scene was the climax of the whole drama. However, now that the TV series had been broadcasted, she was a little scared. Although Qin Yuyan's character design was perfect, she was too evil and vicious. Such a character design was challenging, but in front of the audience, it was not likable at all. Perhaps, the popularity she had accumulated on The Green Apple would be lost in Lethal Beauty. Perhaps, overnight, she would become the public enemy of the whole nation. She summoned up her courage and secretly opened Weibo. Sure enough, the keywords #Qin Yuyan and # appeared on the hot search list. Chapter 2471. Lin Ji and Yun Shishir's acting skills are excellent, but with all due respect, I haven't seen such a vicious female supporting character in a long time. Although I'm not a die-hard fan of Yun Shishir, and I know it's the setting of the script, but now I feel sick when I see Yun Shishir's face. For example, damn it. Qin Yuyan, get out of here. I think this vicious woman deserves to die 10,000 times. I want to chop Qin Yuyan with a knife. Ha 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 ha. A woman who can take the role of Qin Yuyan must be very scheming, right? Yun Shishir doesn't look like a good person, she's obviously a bitch. How can Qin Yuyan be so vicious? She's too shrewd, isn't she? When she gave the white silk, Qin Yuyan's expression was so scary. I shuddered and was scared by her eyes. Yun Shishir cried on the dressing table. Don't you have any pertinent comments? For example, good acting, great acting skills, or something like that. It was over. Was the popularity and reputation that she had worked so hard to accumulate going to be ruined because of the role of Qin Yuyan? Although it was a thankless role, she had already known that the audience would hate her so much that they wanted her to die as soon as possible. Some of the audience even attacked her personally, cursing her to be hit by a car when she went out. It was so heart-wrenching. As she expected, after the broadcast, her Weibo was soon attacked. But on the other hand, she was a little complacent. She thought that the reason why the audience hated this character so much must be her superb acting skills. She had portrayed Qin Yuyan's viciousness so well. In order to study this character, she had spent a lot of effort. From the eyes, to the expression, to the behavior, she had figured it out several times. Qin Yuyan's character had the biggest change in the script. From the initial naivety of a young girl to the later insidious ruthlessness, she played the male and female protagonists with ease. Qin Zhou had told her before that no matter what the audience said about Qin Yuyan, she must post a Weibo status to attract attention after the TV series was broadcast. Yun Shishir posted a Weibo status. She sat in the driver's seat of a modified Golf GTI, took a picture of her hands on the steering wheel, and then posted, "Today, it's not Qin Yuyan, but the racer Han Zhen." Then, he would submit a rather cool selfie and publish it. After posting the Weibo, she threw the phone aside, started the car, and went for a ride on the mountain road near the filming site. Today, she was going to shoot a set of racing scenes. Some of the stunts were naturally done by professional racers. She only needed to reshoot some scenes. In fact, after such a long period of training, he had already learned some basic techniques, such as the basic tail swing and simple drifts. However, since they were filming on the mountain path today, in order to ensure safety, they still had to hire professionals to film those cool scenes. But what made people speechless, Gu Xingze did not do anything at all. Body. Acting. Driver. The whole process of showing off his superb driving skills was done by him alone. Mu Shi seemed to have mentioned before that Gu Xingze also raced in private. He was the artist who owned the most racing cars. Moreover, in this Extreme Youth movie, the male lead's racing cars were all privately owned by him. Chapter 2472. Mu Shi said that Gu Xingze had participated in many international competitions and even won first place in the Ferrari competition 3 years ago. When he was 20 years old, he competed with Schumacher. He was a terrifying man. It was as if this drama was tailor-made for him. After a day of filming, when she returned home, Yu saw her and complained, "Empress Yu, why are you home so early today?" Empress Yu is Qin Yuyan's title in the drama. Yun Shishir's lips twitched when Xiao Yichen ran up to her. After sizing her up for a while, he said with lingering fear, "Mommy, if Xiao Yichen is disobedient in the future, will you give Xiao Yichen 3 feet of white silk?" Pfft. Yun Shishir clutched her chest, feeling hurt internally. "Did you guys watch the premiere?" Yu and Xiao Yichen nodded silently. "I'm so sad." I didn't expect mommy to be so vicious. I watched the premiere yesterday and was so angry at mommy. Xiao Yichen complained tearfully, Sister Changle is so pitiful. She loved Xianyuan Chase so much, but what happened in the end? Even if she dies, she will die in the cold palace. Mommy is so mean. She tampered with the imperial edict and gave her 3 feet of white silk. She's so mean. Yu glanced at him and saw that Xiao Yichen seemed to be too engrossed in the drama as he said sadly, originally, Xianyuan Che's imperial edict was to let Qin Changle out of the cold palace, but Qin Yuyan interfered and caused them to be separated forever. Poisonous. Yun Sheshe retorted, Xiao Yichen, are you poisonous? Look carefully, the person standing in front of you is your most adorable and beautiful mother. Why did you put yourself in the role of Qin Yuyan? Sigh, it's because this drama made me feel so depressed. Yun Sheshe thought in annoyance, this rascal is actually speaking up for Qin Changle. Qin Changle was played by Lin Ji. Although Qin Changle was the female lead, Yun Sheshe didn't like her character because of Lin Ji. After all, first impressions were the strongest. When she thought about how Xiao Yichen actually liked Qin Changle's character, Yun Sheshe was so angry that she suffered internal injuries. Yun Sheshe placed her bag on the sofa and walked into the dining room to pour herself some water. Xiao Yichen immediately followed behind her. He knew that he had offended her with his words, so he smiled in a flattering manner. Mommy, are you thirsty? Aha! Come, sit down and don't move. Xiao Yichen led her to the dining table and sat down. Then, he smiled and said, Mommy, I'll get you some water. Then, he eagerly went to get the purified water to drink. Yun Sheshe's anger dissipated a little. That's more like it. Xiao Yichen eagerly brought the purified water over and even told her to drink slowly. Yun Sheshe picked up the glass and took a sip with satisfaction. Suddenly, she saw Xiao Yichen blinking his beautiful big eyes. He looked at her curiously and passionately. Smiling, he asked, Mommy, when will your character, Qin Yuyan, end? Cough, cough, Yun Sheshe choked violently and coughed repeatedly. Yu saw this and quickly went over to pat her back gently. He glared at Xiao Yichen and snorted coldly. Mu Yichen, are you deliberately trying to make Mommy angry? Because I really hate Qin Yuyan. Xiao Yichen pursed his lips and said. Chapter 2473. Yun Sheshe was touched and said, You are really Mommy's best friend. Yu nodded and said, Mommy, don't worry. Even if I go to hell, I will be with you. Yun Sheshe was silent and her eyes twitched. Is it that tragic? Yes. Mommy, your Weibo is exploding. Exploding. Your fans are exploding your Weibo. Xiao Yichen sat down at the table and said, the sister who played Qin Changle must be very proud now. It seems that all the audience hates Qin Yuyan. This character is so unlikable. Mommy, why did you give up the role of the female lead and play this vicious woman? Because Qin Yuyan has a very moving character. When Yun Sheshe first read the script, she also felt that Qin Yuyan was too horrible. However, later on, she found that Qin Yuyan was not purely a bad person. Compared to Qin Changle's viciousness, Qin Yuyan's so-called viciousness was just a way to protect herself. The author of the original novel communicated with her and was surprised to know that she would play Qin Yuyan. The author said, although I am the author of the original novel, I have no say in the choice of actors. However, I was still surprised to know that you would play the role. Although Qin Yuyan is a vicious character, if you look carefully, you will find that she has sincerity and kindness that even Qin Changle doesn't have. However, this kindness was killed in the end. Qin Yuyan had to fight for it. Although she is selfish, she is very realistic. If you play it well enough, I believe that this role will be a milestone in your career. Sure, an actress's acting skills can conquer any audience. Even if the character was vicious, if she could conquer the audience with her acting skills, it would be a great achievement. That was why she insisted on playing the role of Qin Yuyan. After the TV series was broadcast, it became the #1 movie. The total number of online views reached 100 million and the average number of subscriptions was 30 million. Overnight, the TV series Lethal Beauty added millions of members to the video websites. At the same time, Lin Ji, who played Qin Chang'el, continued to have more and more fans on Weibo. Meanwhile, Yun Shishir lost more than 10,000 fans overnight. Although it wasn't a lot, the phenomenon of fans dropping was continuous. On the other side, Lin Ji was grinning from ear to ear. With the role of Qin Chang'el, Lin Ji seemed to have returned to her former glory. Variety shows, commercials, endorsements, interviews, and so on, she had a full schedule. Because of this role, all the audience seemed to have lost their memories. They had forgotten all about the series of bad and despicable deeds she had done at the film festival. Therefore, in a place like the entertainment industry, no matter how dark your past was, as long as your public relations were in place, there would always be a day when you could clear your name. Lin Ji's popularity, which had been dormant for a long time, seemed to have recovered overnight. Her dazzling performance in the TV series had won her a lot of popularity. Many fans were so immersed in the show that they went to her Weibo to cheer her on. It turned out that a character could also whitewash a person. Yun Shishir finally realized this. Chapter 2474. On Weibo, the criticism of Qin Yuyan was in full swing, but no one cared about Yun Shishir's superb acting skills. Everyone was immersed in Qin Yuyan's vicious shrewdness and completely ignored the fact that, in terms of acting skills, Yun Shishir absolutely crushed Lin Ji. Lin Ji's acting skills were only commendable, but her acting skills overshadowed any other character in the film. Shi said, "The TV festival is coming soon." Sure, I'm really looking forward to it. With this villain role of Qin Yuyan, you'll definitely win the Best Supporting Actress award. The TV festival is just like the film festival. There are many shady deals, so you can't take everything for granted, lest you return disappointed in the end. Yun Shishir rubbed her forehead and said irritably, "The things that have been troubling me recently are true. Honestly speaking, Shi, I like acting and enjoy the sense of accomplishment of using my acting skills to conquer the audience. However, the entertainment industry gives me a feeling that it's more of a foul atmosphere. For example, Lin Ji, Yan Bingqing, and Li Xian are. In Lethal Beauty, every woman in the harem is fighting, but I feel that in real life, the entertainment industry is like a huge harem. The audience is like an emperor with great power, but sometimes, they're like muddle-headed monarchs who are blinded by their rationality. As for these women in the entertainment industry, they live in a world of open strife and veiled strife every day. They only see the newcomers smiling and not the old ones crying. Everyone is like Qin Yuyan, scheming and using all means to climb up the ladder." Shi frowned and suddenly sat down beside her, gently covering the back of her hand. Sure, I know that you've worked very hard. I've seen it all, but you don't have to tire yourself out. I'm sorry, I must have complained too much and given you a lot of psychological pressure. In the future, no matter how big the injustice is, I won't give you any more trouble. You're not the one giving me trouble, so why are you blaming yourself? But I seem to have transmitted a lot of negative energy to you. Idiot, that's enough. I'm just complaining. Oh, right, the door behind him was suddenly pushed open. Exhausted, Gu Xingzi pushed open the door and walked into the dressing room. Just then, he heard Yun Shishir ask Shi with a smile, "Can you help me apply for leave from Qin Zhou tomorrow? I've already applied for leave from the production team, so I won't be able to film for the next 5 days." "What's the matter that requires you to take so many days off?" she asked curiously. Yun Shishir smiled sweetly and blushed. Then, she smiled and said, "I'm going to take my wedding photos." Gu Xingze stood at the door, petrified as if he had been struck by lightning. Just as Mu Shi was about to say something, she caught a glimpse of a tall figure at the door. She could not help but turn her head. When she saw Gu Xingze, she got a shock and exclaimed in shock, "Xingxingze, you're here." Hearing this, Yun Shishir furrowed her brows. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned to look at the door, only to see Gu Xingze leaning against it. His deep-set eyes were buried in his fringe, so she could not see his face clearly. She had actually forgotten that they had 2 scenes together today. She tugged at her lips and greeted him awkwardly, "Xingze." What followed next was a stiff and cold atmosphere, and she did not know how to break the deadlock. Chapter 2475. I'm not avoiding you. Gu Xingze's lips curled into a smile when he heard this. He took a few steps toward her and stopped in front of her desk. "Then, why did you ask the production team to stagger our filming schedules?" Yun Shishir's face stiffened as she froze in shock. The reason why she and Gu Xingze had never bumped into each other after being in the production team for so long was indeed that she had specially instructed the production team to stagger their filming schedules if they did not have any scenes with each other. Sometimes, when Gu Xingze was done filming and left the set, she would arrive at the same time. When she was done filming and left the set, Gu Xingze would arrive at the set. The 2 of them just happened to stagger in time. There was no choice today as they had 2 scenes with each other. Since the start of filming, she seemed to have been raising her conditions. The production team fulfilled them one by one, making her feel ashamed. Hence, she naturally could not be too willful. "Is it because of Li Xian, or?" Gu Xingze suddenly probed nervously, "Are you angry because of this matter?" Yun Shishir did not respond. Beside her, Mu Shi suddenly said indignantly, "Hey, don't talk about Li Xian anymore. She's been creating a lot of hype recently, and the studio is full of complaints because of this. Sir Xingze, Qin Zhou said that you have the means to deal with it, so why haven't you dealt with that woman after so long?" Gu Xingze glanced at her coldly. Mu Shi immediately realized that her tone seemed to be overboard. She lowered her head and did not dare to speak again. Yun Shishir, however, had a perfect smile on her face as she raised a brow disapprovingly. "Why should I be angry?" Gu Xingze was stunned. Although Li Xian has gone overboard, her ultimate goal is to ride on my popularity and become famous. Since that's the case, I'll just do as she wishes. Anyway, I don't care about this. I entered this industry purely because I like acting. I won't feel reluctant to leave when I'm tired of it. Whether it's popularity or fame, there's no need to force things. There's no need to put the cart before the horse. Sure, actually, I feel that the hype of that incident is a bit inexplicable. Everyone had their own private life, and others had no right to interfere. You're the most pitiful one. You're being used by Li Xian, to increase your popularity, and the media is using you to increase your clicks. Xingze, if you want to talk about how you feel, I feel indignant for you. That's all. Gu Xingze's face stiffened. He frowned but did not say anything. Yun Shishir suddenly laughed at herself. What's there for me to be angry about? Do you think I'll be angry because you've ruined yourself over and over again? Mu Shi was stunned. Her words were a little too harsh. Gu Xingze was also surprised. Xingze, Yun Shishir said hesitantly, you're actually very outstanding. If you feel tired, you can quit the entertainment industry and choose to live in seclusion. Leave this foul place and live freely. This place is not suitable for you. If I leave this place, where else can I go? Gu Xingze suddenly retorted. He had no home to return to. He entered the entertainment industry at a young age. It had been 11 years since then, and he had created countless glory. Whether it was popularity, acting skills, or even singing, he had achieved the pinnacle of success that everyone looked up to but could not reach. Chapter 2476. However, the leisurely days left him at a loss for what to do. Perhaps, his life was destined to be cold and cheerless from the moment he was born. He would open his eyes coldly, cry coldly, and laugh coldly. One day in the future, he would leave this world coldly and quietly. He had always been alone in this world. For as long as he could remember, no one seemed to have entered his heart. He had closed himself off time and time again, but there was once a ray of sunlight shining into his world. However, such bright and beautiful warmth did not belong to him. He was a stubborn man to the end. Once he set his mind on something or someone, he would not change his mind no matter what. Until the end of his life. Gu Xingzi suddenly curled his lips and said, "You don't have to ask about it, but I want you to know that I'm not a scourge. You don't have to avoid me. Also, I heard that you're holding a wedding soon. I'd like to congratulate you in advance and wish you happiness. Also, you don't have to worry that I won't forget you. I have my pride and self-esteem. Once you've made up your mind, I won't turn back. Therefore, you don't have to worry about me pestering you. In fact, I've never done anything to trouble you." After a pause, he sucked in a breath of cold air and said calmly, Sure, I've already let go long ago and let go of my so-called obsession. I'm not the kind of man who pesters you and won't give up even if he can't have you. If you find Li Xian or his matter troubling, I'll deal with it properly. I'm deeply sorry for the trouble I've caused you because of my personal reasons." His distant and cold words were extremely resolute. He forced himself to say those words calmly and decisively. He pretended to be calm in order to make her believe that he had let go of all his obsessions. After Gu Xingzi said this, he slowly turned around and left without looking back. Mu Shi watched him leave in a daze. When she turned around, she saw Yun Shishir with her head lowered and an expressionless face. Rather than saying that he was expressionless, it would be better to say that he was trying hard to suppress some kind of emotion. His tightly clenched fists suddenly loosened. Mu Shi thought to herself that, in her eyes, Shishir and Xingzi were actually a match made in heaven. If Shishir could be with Xingzi, she would probably be very happy, right? Gu Xingzi was really affectionate. Sometimes, when you loved someone deeply but couldn't get them, you had to force yourself to restrain your obsession. It must be very painful. She knew that very well. Mu Shi once thought that it would be great if Shishir could be with Xingzi. However, she wasn't someone who would randomly match a couple. It could be seen that Shishir was very happy now. Her heart belonged to someone, so she could only give her blessings. It was just that fate was a strange thing. She wanted to ask Shishir if she had met Gu Xingzi at the beginning of her destiny, would she have chosen him without hesitation? Unfortunately, there were no ifs. Yun Shishir adjusted her emotions. After she was done with her makeup, she rushed to the set and started filming. However, she seemed to be in a bad state and was a little absent-minded. Compared to Gu Xingzi's engrossed acting state, her eyes were unfocused and her expression empty. The director was not satisfied with a few takes. It was not until the 5th take that he walked up to her and asked, Shishir, are you not in the right state today? Yes. I'm not feeling well. Chapter 2477. Gu Xingzi suddenly said, we'll shoot a long shot today. When she's in a better state, we'll do a close-up. That works too. The director asked deliberately, Shishir, you'll be fine with her back view, right? Hang in there for a while more and go home early to rest after you're done. Okay. The rest of the shoot went exceptionally smoothly. After Gu Xingzi's scenes were over, he left first. Yun Shishir stayed behind to shoot her scene with Hua Jin. By the time it was over, it was already 7 in the evening. When they left the set, Hua Jin nagged that he wanted to hitch a ride in Yun Shishir's nanny van. The reason was simple. My car broke down this morning and was towed to the garage. Yun Shishir was surprised. Your car broke down? Yeah. I just bought a second-hand Mercedes-Benz that costs more than 300,000. But I think it was scammed by a scammer. It's in terrible condition and keeps breaking down. Second-hand? Yun Shishir asked suspiciously. I remember that you have your own nanny van and private car. Didn't you drive a GTR before? Hua Jin turned his face away and pretended to be oblivious. I don't care. I want to hitch a ride in your nanny van. I haven't experienced such a luxurious nanny van before. Yun Shishir complained quietly, Hua Jin, you seem to be down and out recently. As soon as she said that, Hua Jin suddenly stopped in his tracks. Yun Shishir turned around in surprise and saw him standing there with a faint smile on his face. She asked in surprise, what's wrong? Hua Jin said innocently, how do I look down and out? Compared to when you were on the set of Lethal Beauty, you drove a flashy sports car, had 7 or 8 assistants and managers, and were surrounded by a huge entourage. But you seem to be more low-key recently. You don't drive a GTR, but a second-hand car. Because I can't afford a new car. I can't afford a new Mercedes-Benz. Why? Yun Shishir asked curiously, where's your GTR? I returned it to her. Ah. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment and did not react for a moment. Hua Jin looked up and smiled. I've cut ties with her. Yun Shishir stared at him blankly. It took her a few seconds to realize who Hua Jin was referring to. She couldn't help but look surprised and relieved. You've severed ties with her? Yes. Hua Jin slowly caught up with her and looked up at the sky. After I cut ties with her, I returned the car, branded jewelry, apartment, and credit cards that she bought for me. In order to compensate her, I transferred all the assets under my name to her. Of course, there are still some leftovers. What's the change? Less than $1 million. Yun Shishir was speechless for a moment. That's just a small fraction. I didn't expect you to be a tycoon. You think? Hua Jin said proudly, since my debut, I've earned about 200 to 300 million from my remuneration, endorsements, and some investments. Yun Shishir was taken aback. Oh, my God. That's a lot. Yeah, my photo album last year sold a few million copies in Asia. That much? Chapter 2478. Depression. Don't you know? Hua Jin scoffed. There's been some political turmoil in Japan and South Korea recently, especially in South Korea. With the emergence of THAAD, anti-Korean sentiment is very high, so cultural exchanges between the two countries have been stifled. Yun Shishir said sympathetically, no wonder you've been so tight on money recently. I rented an apartment in the city center and used the rest to buy a car. There's not much left in my account. Yun Shishir suddenly smiled and patted him on the shoulder. She said generously, it's just a Mercedes-Benz, I'll give it to you. You'll give it to me? Yes. I'll give you the latest E-Class AMG. Hua Jin said awkwardly, I don't want it. Yun Shishir frowned. What? I can see that your eyes clearly say that you really want it. Isn't a Mercedes-Benz man's ultimate dream? Hua Jin snorted. My ultimate dream isn't that superficial. Then, what's your ultimate dream? Hua Jin immediately said proudly, since you said it's your ultimate dream, how can you talk about it so casually? Yun Shishir was peeved for a second before she snorted proudly. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Even if you want to say it, I don't want to hear it. The two bickered all the way to the nanny van. In the hospital. The atmosphere in the ward was stifling. Lu Jingtian's heart-wrenching cries could be heard from time to time. Her vocal cords were damaged, so even when she spoke, her voice was extremely hoarse and broken. Lu Bushing and his mother stood outside the ward, heartbroken as they looked at the woman lying on the bed moaning in pain. Lu Jingtian was lying on the bed with 7 or 8 doctors and nurses surrounding her. 2 were in charge of stabilizing her emotions while the rest were in charge of changing her dressing. The process of changing the dressing was extremely painful. Lu Jingtian was almost going crazy from the torture of changing the dressing. She really did not understand. She clearly did not use a knife, but when the medicine was applied to her wound over and over again, it felt as if her flesh was being cut off with 1,000 cuts every time. Every 2 days, he had to change the dressing. Every time he had to change the dressing, it would take an hour. Lu Jingtian broke out in a cold sweat when the dressing was changed. She even thought that if living had to be so painful, she might as well end her own life. Ever since she was rescued, she had continued to have nightmares. She was half awake intermittently. In her muddle-headed state, she could vaguely hear her mother crying, her father blaming himself, and the pitiful and helpless sighs of the doctors and nurses. "Doctor, is there really no hope for my daughter's face? We've done our best. No matter how brilliant the plastic surgery technology is, it will be difficult to repair such a large area of trauma." Lu Jingtian could vaguely hear the heart-wrenching conversation. She even wondered why she had to be resuscitated and why she could not just quietly end her life on the cold operating table. She couldn't open her mouth and speak. If she had the chance to speak again, she would definitely beg her mother and the doctor to euthanize her. She didn't want to live in such pain. Don't live in such a sorry state. Chapter 2479. However, the most ridiculous thing was that she could not bear to bite off her tongue. She was too weak. That woman had succeeded. Yes, she was reaping what she sowed. If she had not disfigured Yuna's face back then, she would not be lying on this bed in such a pathetic state. Yuna had succeeded. She had succeeded in destroying herself. She had completely destroyed herself. She could not bear to live on in humiliation. She could not bear to see herself become so ugly and still welcome the bright dawn with a bright smile. Every morning, she would look at the morning sun outside the window and feel that her world would forever sink into darkness and despair. The ray of sunlight outside the window could no longer shine into her heart. However, every time she saw her mother crying and father sighing by the bedside, she would encourage herself again and again. Live on. She was not even afraid of death, so why should she be afraid of living? Perhaps she could recover well. Perhaps advanced medical technology could give her a brand new life. Perhaps she still had a future. However, with the recovery of her body's senses, the unparalleled pain quickly eroded her willpower. It was precisely because of this that she suddenly realized that sometimes, living was the truly cruel thing to do. Living on was torture. From then on, she was a cripple. She could no longer hug the man she loved. She could no longer wear a beautiful dress. She could no longer put on her favorite lipstick. She couldn't even face her own demon-like face. Even being able to walk properly had become a luxury. She vaguely heard that the area of her right leg was too large for skin grafting. If the infection was serious, she would have to face amputation. Amputation. When she heard this news, she felt dizzy and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She broke down and asked in her heart, could it be that even the right to walk like a healthy person is being cruelly taken away? Could it be that she would have to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair? Her mother kept comforting her. Tian, don't be afraid. If you really can't keep your leg, I'll take good care of you for the rest of your life. Lu Jingtian could not speak. She cried bitterly in her heart and asked, what if you and father are no longer around? Who would take care of a cripple like her? Why don't I just end my own life right now? After the dressing was changed, she broke out in a cold sweat from the pain and wet the bed sheets. The nurse had no choice but to move her to the side and change the bed sheets. This kind of work brought about unimaginable pain. She was already covered in cuts and bruises. No matter where she was touched, she was in great pain. The nurse had to move her to another bed. She had to go through a lot of trouble to move her to another bed. She had to suffer a lot. Living a life worse than death, living a life worse than death. She kept repeating these words in her heart as she clenched her teeth tightly. She kept letting her imagination run wild. Why didn't that big fire burn her to ashes? At the very least, it was just a momentary pain. At the very least, she didn't have to live so bitterly and suffer. Oh my God, please spare her. She really didn't have any will to live. Chapter 2480. Her eyes were dim and lifeless. She was completely disheartened. If not for the rising and falling of her chest, one would not be able to tell that she was still alive and would only think that she was a charred corpse. She could no longer bear it. She turned around and clutched her father's collar tightly as she tried to suppress her pain. Is there really no other way? Bushing, are you just going to watch your daughter suffer like this? How can she go on like this? What can I do? What else can I do? If I can take her place, I'll naturally do it without any hesitation. You didn't give me that option, so I can't do anything. I'm at my wit's end. Do you think I want to watch her suffer like this? Lu Bushing's heart ached uncontrollably. He sighed deeply and suddenly lowered his voice. If I could, it's not that I haven't considered euthanasia, but I just can't muster up the courage to do it. Moreover, maybe she also wanted to live well. Maybe she also had a strong will to live. You're her mother, you must be stronger than her. Euthanasia. His mother shuddered when she heard this term. She pushed him away and asked sharply, "Are you crazy? She's your biological daughter, yet you want to kill her with your own hands. Are you crazy?" Seeing that his words had been misinterpreted, he waved his hand in annoyance and said, "Calm down. Calm down. We both need to calm down now." With that, he pushed the door open and walked to the corridor to smoke. His mother fell back into the chair and covered her face with her hands. She wanted to cry, but she held it in and did not shed a single tear. Sometimes, when one was in a state of great grief, one could not even shed tears. She was transferred from the emergency room to the ICU for half a month, and the pain was unbearable. After 5 painful changes of dressing, she finally passed the infection period and could try to get out of bed. Getting out of bed meant that she was about to enter the rehabilitation period. The doctor repeatedly reminded her that the rehabilitation period might be very long. She had severe burns, and her muscles, memory, and nerves were damaged. If she did not train, it would inevitably lead to muscle atrophy. Rehabilitation was very painful, but no matter how painful it was, he had to face it. After she got out of bed, she tried to walk around the ward twice and was already gasping for breath from the pain. The next day, she could finally try to walk back and forth 4 times. Slowly, she could already try to push open the door of the ward with her hand and walk out of the ward. A sense of relief slowly surfaced in her heart. She finally felt the joy of being human again. She thought that as long as she didn't look in the mirror in the future, there should be no problem, right? She worked hard to live on, even if it was for the sunshine of tomorrow, for the beautiful sunset. Although she wanted to give up her life more than once, she was also greedy for the beauty of life more than once. She still had a lot of unfinished business. Her body was recovering well and was optimistic. The doctor also said that if she continued to recover at this rate, she might be able to save her leg and avoid amputation. Lu Jingtian was greatly encouraged. The doctor's encouragement gave her a glimmer of hope. If medical technology was developed in the future, it might not be too difficult to reconstruct one's appearance. Chapter 2481. On this day, when Lu Buxing's mother and mother were not in the ward, she tried to get out of bed by herself. She staggered to the door of the ward and supported herself against the wall, trying to walk for a while. She tried her best to do more rehabilitation and to get better as soon as possible. That way, she would be able to leave this ward filled with the smell of disinfectant. Lu Jingtian slowly walked with her hands against the wall. All of a sudden, she heard a little girl's playful voice not far away. Immediately after, a rubber ball rolled to her feet. She took a deep look at it, gritted her teeth, and tried to reach out her hand to pick up the small rubber ball. She opened her fingers and picked it up with much difficulty. The joy of success instantly lit up her eyes. A series of lively footsteps quickly approached her and stopped in front of her. Immediately after, a little girl's innocent voice was heard. "Auntie, this is my rubber ball." The soft voice of a child sounded very young, about 7 or 8 years old, and was very cute and obedient. Lu Jingtian raised her head in surprise and looked at the little girl in front of her. However, when the little girl saw her face and the scars on her body, her bright and beautiful smile froze on her face and her whole body shuddered. She could not help but widen her eyes in horror. Her face was filled with fear and trepidation. She took a few steps back in horror and staggered before she burst into tears. "Wah! There's a monster! Wah 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 wah! What a scary monster! Wah wah wah! Mommy, mommy! Help! A monster wants to eat Xin Xin! There's a monster!" Lu Jingtian was petrified as if she had been struck by lightning. Her hand involuntarily loosened, and the rubber ball fell to the ground and rolled to the side. The little girl's continuous crying alerted the nurse. The girl's mother also rushed over from another ward when she heard the commotion. She ran over in a panic to carry the little girl, thinking that an adult was deliberately scaring the child. When she turned her head, she saw Lu Jingtian, who was frozen in the corner, and the anger on her face disappeared. She was stunned for a few seconds before she finally realized what had happened. The child was probably playful and accidentally bumped into this person. Then, she was frightened by the woman's appearance and cried. Lu Jingtian took note of the woman's face. Her fair skin was delicate and soft. Her pair of gentle eyes were as exquisite as a painting. Her entire face was perfect without a single flaw. When he thought of himself, he immediately felt ashamed of his own inferiority. Lu Jingtian's heart ached terribly. She lowered her head, unwilling to expose her face to others. "I'm not a monster. I just want to pick up the ball for her. I'm not a monster, but that girl said she was a monster." She couldn't help but be curious. Just how terrifying was her face? How terrifying must it be for an ignorant girl to yell and call it a monster? The woman scolded the girl and then apologized to her. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The child is not sensible, and her words carry no harm. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry, I'm very sorry." The woman kept apologizing. Perhaps she also realized that because of the child's innocent words, she had deeply hurt a disfigured girl. Chapter 2482. If not, she should have an ordinary face, right? Still, even such a face was enough to make her envious. Once again, she felt lost. Once again, she recognized the cruel truth. Suddenly, like a deserter, she turned around and groped her way into the ward. Feeling extremely guilty, the woman chased after her, wanting to apologize again. However, Lu Jingtian wailed and waved her hands hysterically. The woman, who was carrying the child, was frightened. The scene was extremely ugly. Lu Jingtian broke down and wailed, and the child wailed in fear. The woman stood rooted to the ground in embarrassment, not knowing whether to leave or apologize. A nurse ran over and immediately calmed her down. After understanding the situation from the woman, she quickly resolved this embarrassing situation. The woman left with the child in her arms. Lu Jingtian was helped to the ward by the nurse. A few nurses helped her to the bed and then left the ward. Once they were gone, Lu Jingtian suddenly struggled to sit up in bed. She got off the bed in a frenzy and staggered, almost falling. She stumbled to the sofa and found her mother's bag in the ward. After rummaging through it for a while, she finally found a sleek box. It was a makeup box. She clutched the makeup box tightly in her hand and took it out of the bag. She opened it, but her fingertips couldn't stop trembling. Ever since she was rescued and regained consciousness, she had mentioned more than once that she wanted to see how badly her face was ruined. When she was burned, she was still conscious, so she knew very well where the fire had burned and destroyed. When the fire burned her face, it was so painful that even her eyelashes were burned off. Her face was definitely ruined, but she did not know how badly it was ruined. Lu Buxing kept preventing her from looking at the mirror, advising her kindly that she should look at her face after it had completely recovered. Her mother also coaxed her and kept her from looking at the mirror. It was only later that she gradually stopped caring about this matter. Or perhaps, as if she was deceiving herself, she simply stopped thinking about it and focused on recovering her body as soon as possible. However, when she walked out of the door earlier, a child saw her face and cried in fright, calling her a monster. She was suddenly jolted awake and desperately wanted to know how horrible her face was at this moment. She was actually called a monster by a child. However, when she held the makeup box in her hand, she became a little timid. She suddenly did not dare to look at it. She was a little timid, a little scared, and a little flustered. She was afraid that she would break down, be upset, and be unable to accept it when she saw her face. Just as she was struggling internally, she suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air, mustered up her courage, and slowly opened the box. She then opened her eyes and looked at the small mirror in the box. "Ah!" She screamed. It was only when the face in the mirror showed a panicked expression that she realized that the unbearable face in the mirror really belonged to her. It turned out that her face was even more damaged than she had imagined. Riddled with holes, unsightly. Chapter 2483. By the time Madame Lu rushed back to the hospital, it was already close to evening. As the nurses were changing shifts, she hurried into the ward, only to see that the lights were off. She hurriedly turned on the lights, and the moment the ward was lit up, a figure curled up in a corner of the sofa came into her sight. She took a step back in shock, and only then did she realize that the person curled up on the sofa was Lu Jingtian. Tian, why are you sitting here?" asked Madame Lu worriedly, but there was no response from her. Mama Lu immediately walked over worriedly, only to find that she was curled up in a corner like a zombie. There was no sign of life on her body. She was just curled up there, motionless. Her hands hung empty by her side, and even her back was devoid of any signs of life. She was about to ask her about it worriedly when she followed the direction of her hand and saw the makeup box on the floor. Her heart skipped a beat, and she felt suffocated for a moment. She nervously picked up the box and opened it, only to see that the mirror inside had several cracks and was in pieces. Madame Lu immediately realized what had happened. She was probably desperate to find out what had happened to her face, so she frantically searched for a mirror to take a look. Alas, when she finally saw her face, she could not accept it, and that was why she had been unable to recover from the setback until now. Lu Jingtian's mother's heart ached as she gently patted her shoulder. Just as she was about to say a few words of consolation, the latter abruptly swatted her hand away and shrank further into the corner. She screamed at her with a face full of helplessness and despair. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Madame Lu's heart ached as she rushed forward and carefully hugged her daughter. She cried, Tian, don't be like this. Don't scare Mommy. Mommy is scared. Don't be scared, Mommy is here. Mommy will protect you and won't let anyone hurt you, okay? Stop screaming. Her words, however, did not reach Lu Jingtian. She continued to cry and throw a tantrum, as if to vent all the pain, exhaustion, and unbearable sadness of the past few days. She had a complete mental breakdown. That was because she had seen her face in that one glance, and she was utterly defeated. Fear, helplessness, loneliness, and despair, all these emotions were entrenched in her heart. She was almost out of breath. Despite her mother's repeated coaxing, Lu Jingtian still could not stop crying. In the end, she ended up vomiting blood, which was probably due to excessive strain on her vocal cords. When she saw this, she was immediately frightened and shouted loudly for the doctor. Her shrill and fearful cries echoed in the corridor for a long time. A minute later, the doctor hurriedly rushed over. Seeing how frantic she was, he immediately prescribed a dose of tranquilizer and pushed it down her throat. Lu Jingtian's eyes rolled back as she fainted. "What's going on?" The doctor scolded. "Why are you suddenly like this? Wasn't everything fine before?" Mrs. Lu shook her head and said, "I don't know either. I left the hospital for a while and when I came back, I saw her like this. Maybe she secretly looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't accept her appearance." She guessed. Chapter 2484. Due to the innocent child's careless words, he was frightened by her appearance and called her a monster a few times. It was probably because of these words that she wanted to check her appearance in the mirror. The nurse did not say anything, though. The dosage of the tranquilizer was very small, so by the time she woke up, it was already 3 in the morning. That night, it was Lu Bushing who stayed to keep her company. She knew very well that her mother had been keeping her company for 2 consecutive nights and was exhausted. Tonight, it was time for her to go home and have a good rest. Lu Bushing took her place to keep her company. As a senior executive in the company, he had to deal with a lot of work every day. Therefore, he fell asleep the moment he lay down and closed his eyes. He was in a deep sleep, and from time to time, he snored heavily. It seemed that he was really exhausted. She suddenly turned her head to look at the moonlight outside the window. Through the glass pane, she could see the endless night. In that instant, she made a decision. After she made this decision, her entire being strangely calmed down. There was no color on her face, and it was deathly still and gloomy like the depths of the abyss. Lu Jingtian slowly sat up and tried to do so. The hospital bed frame was a little thin, so it soon made a creaking sound. She stood still vigilantly and turned her head to look at her father, who was sleeping on the sofa. In the dark, she could still hear his smooth snoring. This strange sound did not seem to have disturbed him. She felt relieved and relaxed at the same time. She quietly lifted the quilt and struggled to move her legs. She slowly got out of bed, held the headboard for support, and slowly landed on the ground with difficulty. She stood up. This series of actions took her several minutes to complete, and she broke out in a cold sweat. The inconvenience of moving could no longer make her sad, though. That was because it was going to end soon. It was going to end these miserable days. She should have made up her mind long ago. As her thoughts ran wild, she held onto the bed for support, put on her slippers, and walked toward the door with heavy footsteps. When she reached the door, she suddenly turned her head and glanced at her father who was lying on the sofa. She made quite a bit of noise when she got off the bed. Creak, creak, creak. It was even a little ear-piercing. However, he must be very tired and was in a deep sleep. Therefore, he was immersed in his dreams and did not wake up. She reached out to touch the door handle. It was cold, just like her determined heart at this moment. Suddenly, she remembered that they were about to leave, so she should at least hold a farewell ceremony, right? Lu Jingtian could not help tearing up at the thought of this. It was not true that she had no worries. She still had many worries. A man's words were kind when he was about to die. She was about to make a decision with this mortal world, so she knew that she was about to bid farewell to it. She suddenly felt a great sorrow in her heart. The thing she regretted the most in life was being young and frivolous. She had caused her parents a lot of grievances and often made them angry. Until the very last moment, it would definitely bring them a lot of pain and suffering. She had originally wanted to write a will, but forgive her. It was so difficult for her to even hold a pen now. Chapter 2485. At the very least, he did not need to take care of a burden like her. The two of them could enjoy their remaining years, right? She was a cripple, after all. It would take a lot of effort to take care of her. She did not have the conviction to live on and be a burden to them. At the very end, leave them some peace and quiet, right? Lu Jingtian's thoughts ran wild again. She walked to the sofa and opened her mouth, but all she could taste was a hint of fishy sweetness. The words goodbye were stuck in her throat, and she could not say them out loud. Her lips moved as if to say goodbye, but her tears fell at once. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I can't repay you for raising me. Now, I have to say goodbye. If there's an afterlife, I'll definitely repay you. Please don't worry about me or miss me because leaving is the best way for me to be free. She said goodbye silently in her heart. Holding back her tears, she walked to the door, pushed it open, and walked out. The corridor was quiet. She held on to the wall as she walked. Dressed in a snow-white hospital gown, she looked like a lonely ghost at first glance. The lights were dim, and only the nurse's desk was lit. At this moment, the nurses on duty were lying on the desk with their eyes closed. Lu Jingtian walked very slowly to the elevator. She pressed the button for her floor, walked into the elevator with difficulty, and pressed the button for the top floor. The top floor of the hospital was 28 stories high. This hospital had been renovated and looked brand new. The towering floors were like a prison, holding many patients who were either in pain or in pain. She went to the top floor, passed through the fire escape, and walked to the rooftop. The door to the rooftop was not locked. Some of the nurses who lived in the dormitory would bring a change of clothes to the rooftop to dry. She walked up to the rooftop. Then, she walked to the edge of the rooftop and slowly sat down while holding onto the railing. The wind at night was very cold and strong. She could not be exposed to the wind, but now, she was not afraid of anything. She was finally going to be free. Not only did she not feel sad or afraid, but she was also very calm when she saw that she was about to be free. So calm that it was frightening. She even began to imagine that when she jumped down from this rooftop, her body would fall freely, and finally collide with the hard ground. She would probably be smashed to pieces from the height of 28 floors, right? Pain was inevitable. It was inevitable that he would be in a sorry state. What came with this, though, was the fact that she no longer had to face her ugly face and the constant physical and mental torture. Instead, she felt much more at ease. Her lips tugged into a forlorn smile. Looking into the distance, she could just see the neon lights of the city. She recognized that it was a street of bars. If this accident did not happen, she would probably be in those bars and nightclubs at this time, indulging herself in luxury and enjoying a night of debauchery with those unrestrained men and women. Only after losing something would one realize how precious what they once had was. However, at this time, no amount of regret could make up for it. Lu Jingtian sat on the edge of the balcony in silence for a long time. It was only when the wind turned cold and her head hurt that she finally got to her feet. She stood up shakily and straightened her body. With her back facing the edge of the balcony, she did not want to look at the shocking scene below. Instead, she gently leaned back. Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu. Chapter 2486. Liu Bushing was woken up by a few panicked nurses pushing him. He sat up alertly and opened his eyes, only to see a few nurses standing in front of him, looking extremely nervous. The lights in the ward were on, and it was a dazzling white. He squinted his eyes. "What's wrong?" "Bad news, your daughter. The nurses were so flustered that they could not form a complete sentence. However, when he heard the key words, Lu Bushing immediately became alert. He turned his head abruptly to look at the bed, but there was no one on the snow-white bed. "Where's my daughter?" He jumped up from the sofa in agitation, grabbed one of the nurses, and questioned, "Where did she go?" Before the nurse could speak, an ear-piercing siren pierced through the night sky outside the window. Lu Bushing's bloodshot eyes widened. As if he suddenly realized something, he pushed the crowd aside and rushed out of the door. 2 police cars drove into the inpatient department. Soon, the siren stopped, and a few policemen got out of the cars. The empty ground of the building was crowded with people. Some were the patients who were hospitalized, some were family members who stayed overnight, and some were the hospital's caregivers and cleaning aunties, as well as nurses and on-duty doctors. Everyone was gathered in one place, bowing their heads, shaking their heads and sighing, as if they were lamenting something heavy. Lu Bushing rushed out of the inpatient building and immediately noticed that the fountain not far away was crowded with people. His entire body trembled as he frowned in disbelief. His eyes quickly turned red and widened as he sucked in a few breaths of cold air in disbelief. The fountain was some distance away from the entrance. Lu Bushing did not know how he managed to walk this distance. He only knew that he walked over in a daze. He heard the onlookers shaking their heads and sighing. Why did this little girl take things so hard? She probably jumped from the rooftop. The wind is strong at night and blew her here. Sigh, she's still so young. What a pity. Lu Bushing immediately pushed the crowd aside. Excuse me. Let me see my daughter. Let me see my daughter. When the crowd heard that the father of the deceased was here, they immediately made a path for him silently. However, there were still many kind-hearted people who said quietly, "Sir, please restrain your grief and accept this." Lu Bushing pushed through the crowd and rushed in. He immediately saw the pool of blood on the ground that was surrounded by the crowd. Falling from a high place, he died miserably. One of his legs was broken, and his flesh was badly mangled. It was too horrible to look at. Lu Bushing suffered a great visual impact. He felt that he couldn't connect his breath and almost fell to the ground. The police quickly walked over to protect the scene. Then, they heard a man's desperate and sorrowful cry from the crowd, "Tian Tian." The next day, news of Lu Jingtian's death by jumping off a building spread like wildfire. Lu Bushing was unable to bear the pain of losing his daughter. He suddenly suffered a myocardial infarction and was sent to the emergency room. Mama Lu, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, also fell ill when she learned that her beloved daughter had jumped to her death. The couple was sent to the emergency room at the same time. Chapter 2487. Despite Huanyu's official efforts to keep the news under wraps, there were still some astute reporters who caught wind of it. They waited at the hospital and soon learned of the matter, which they quickly released. Rookie actress Lu Jingtian met with an accident. Unable to bear the burden during her recovery, she jumped to her death from the rooftop. Lu Jingtian is Lu Bushing's beloved daughter? Rumor has it that Lu Bushing suffered a myocardial infarction due to the pain of losing his daughter. After emergency treatment, his life is no longer in danger. Lu Jingtian, disfigured by fire, jumped from the rooftop in utter despair. Her young life has ended just like that. A look at the top 10 female actresses who have died in showbiz. Another storm was stirred up on Weibo. When the public learned of this news, their curiosity was instantly aroused, and they sighed. The entertainment industry had always been transparent to the public. The more popular an artist was, the more difficult it was for him or her to ensure that his or her personal life was free of interference. Some time ago, news of Lu Jingtian's disfigurement due to a fire was still trending on Weibo's trending page. Even though she had not debuted for long and did not have many works to her name, she did play a supporting role in The Green Apple some time ago and gained some fame, but it did not bring her considerable popularity. However, the public's concern for a celebrity's disfigurement was beyond imagination. Now, not long after, there was news of her suicide. The netizens were in an uproar. They could not wait to hear the news firsthand. How did Lu Jingtian commit suicide? Why did Lu Jingtian commit suicide? The tragic scene of Lu Jingtian jumping off a building. Painful reflections on Lu Jingtian's death. Is Lu Jingtian really dead? Or is it a publicity stunt by the company? A female celebrity seems to have committed suicide by jumping off a building yesterday. Ah, I know. Isn't it that, Lu Jingtian? My sister is a nurse at that hospital. She was at the scene when the incident happened. I heard that she died a horrible death, even her head was smashed. Oh, God. Why did she commit suicide? I heard that she was disfigured due to an accident. She probably lost the will to live and chose to end her life. How pitiful. Isn't her father very rich, though? If he has money, he can do plastic surgery and skin grafts. There's no need for her to commit suicide, right? He. It's hard to explain the entertainment industry's affairs in a few words. Who knows? The Lu Jingtian, who played a supporting role in The Green Apple, actually jumped to her death last night. It's too scary. Jumping off a building to death to her death. Why did she commit suicide? Lu Jingtian of the family of Lu Jingtians to death, her parents to, hers to, s to death, b. Are to her death, I don't understand what these rich people are trying to do. Of Lu, to commit suicide, Lu's to, s to be a topic to this, to's to, s, to die of her Lu of her Jingtians of her of a a's of her twos to Lu to her twos, to be to death, hers. Most of the netizens were just curious about this incident. Chapter 2488. The next day after Lu Jingtian's death, a few unscrupulous reporters sneaked into the hospital's morgue with their SLR cameras to take photos of her body. Naturally, the hospital had strict security and quickly sent these unscrupulous reporters to the police station. However, even so, these reporters still kept the negatives. After being bailed out, they returned to the media agency and directly opened a sock puppet account. They sold the photos to netizens at high prices on the forum. The netizens bought the photos and directly published them on the internet. Although the website was quickly blocked, the photos quickly spread on the internet. Huanyu's officials were outraged and issued an announcement to accuse these unscrupulous netizens and media outlets. They even threatened to initiate legal proceedings. Lu Jingtian's suicide kept brewing. Many celebrities and famous figures in various industries posted condolences on Weibo. In the basement of the villa, Yun Na turned on the TV. The entertainment channel was broadcasting a follow-up report of Lu Jingtian's suicide. The scene happened to cut to the hospital. Lights flashed, and Lu Bushing and his mother, dressed in plain black, were being supported by people as they walked among the crowd. Lu Bushing appeared steady and reserved, while his wife was heartbroken. She covered her face with a handkerchief. In the close-up, her eyes were red and swollen with tears, and her face was full of pain. Microphones were constantly pushed in front of them. At first, Lu Bushing tried his best to restrain himself. It was obvious that if it weren't for his public image, he would have really wanted to smash the microphones that the reporters pushed in front of him to the ground and stomp on them to vent his anger. He opened his mouth and said in a hoarse voice, "Don't push. Make way, please make way." Several bodyguards surrounded them and pushed the reporters away. The two left the hospital with heavy expressions, got into a car, and sped away. Yun Na quietly picked up a cup of tea and slowly blew on it. Then, she unhurriedly took a sip, appearing nonchalant. Suicide. That was really straightforward. Still, the girl was sensible and obedient enough to end her own life, saving her the trouble of making a trip to the hospital. Lu Jingtian was still alive. She was like a ticking time bomb that could explode at any time. She originally wanted to wait until the time was right for the Missy to be discharged from the hospital before making a plan to make her completely disappear from the world without leaving a trace. She did not care if Lu Jingtian's vocal cords were burned or if she could still speak or if her identity would be exposed. She had no intention of letting her live when she laid her hands on her. But he didn't expect that this bitch's life was so tough. Even such a big fire didn't burn her to death. Therefore, her heart had long been filled with killing intent. However, things had already come to this. Forget it. In any case, the ending would be the same. Since he had committed suicide by jumping off a building, it would save her a lot of worry. Yun Na silently criticized in her heart, yet a satisfied and complacent expression appeared on her face. In fact, she wasn't worried about exposing her whereabouts and identity. It was just that she couldn't expose herself in advance before completing her final mission. To put it bluntly, even if Lu Jingtian did not accuse her and Yun Yeqing did not expose her, she would not be afraid even if she was arrested. She was not afraid of death. She had not been afraid of anything since she had climbed out of hell. Chapter 2489. Lu Jingtian's incident continued to fester. On Weibo, many media outlets wrote articles, either to mourn or express their opinions. In short, the keyword Lu Jingtian's suicide became the hottest news in the entertainment industry. In fact, she was not particularly famous. She was just a little-known celebrity who did not have the opportunity to be exposed to the public. If she had simply committed suicide by jumping off a building, it would not be surprising, and the hype would have died down in 2 days. However, this incident was not simple and was full of doubts. Ever since she was hospitalized, her burn had become a hot topic for the public. With the media's wantonly publicity and investigation, it also whetted the public's curiosity. Although she was just a small-time celebrity, to the public, who had nothing to do, this matter became a topic of discussion. On the internet, many netizens questioned, how did she get burned? Who was the suspicious man in black in the video released by the police? Could it be murder? Was Lu Jingtian disfigured? If it was a vendetta, then was there a conclusion to the investigation? Was the culprit caught? If it was not a vendetta, then was there a hidden danger to the security in the capital? Just as this matter had yet to be fully explained, the news of Lu Jingtian's suicide by jumping off a building quickly swept across the headlines of major media outlets. Lu Jingtian's suicide was confusing from start to finish. Just 2 days after the incident, Huanyu released a painful obituary to announce the matter. The obituary read, "Our dearest Lu Jingtian committed suicide by jumping off a building on February XX, at the age of 23. Lu Jingtian was a newly popular starlet who debuted with The Green Apple. Due to her outstanding acting skills and innocent looks, she gained a lot of popularity. Just a month ago, however, due to an accident, she was burned in a fire. 85% of her body was burned, causing severe disfigurement and even disability. Since the incident, the company had been paying attention to her recovery. Her family, friends, and fans were also constantly encouraging her, hoping that she would be able to walk out of her grief as soon as possible and actively cooperate with the treatment. Her recovery was ideal. Just a week ago, she successfully passed the critical and infectious stage. Just as everyone was feeling excited, 2 days ago, unfortunate news came. Our beloved Jingtian still could not walk out of the pain of her disfigurement. 2 days ago, at 3 a.m., she jumped off the rooftop of a hospital building and died. What was supposed to be a beautiful season, yet she passed away. We feel sad and sorry for her. At this moment, no matter how much rhetoric and words we use, they are pale and powerless. The dead are gone, and the living. We only wish her a safe journey. Once the obituary was released, many netizens, who were still skeptical about the suicide case. For the past few days, Lu Jingtian's suicide was still the hottest headline, even overtaking Li Xiang, who had been hyped up for a while. And what about Li Xiang? How could he let the matter rest? Naturally, it wouldn't stop there. Chapter 2490. The deceased should always be respected. Despite such a tragedy, Li Xian was still trying her best to hype things up. Many netizens hated her face. When Li Xian saw this comment, she coldly mocked, "What else can be considered pure in the entertainment industry? Hate it. Hate it as much as you want. My reputation is already so bad. Since that's the case, I'll focus on creating hype until I become famous." She was indignant, but she also wanted to fight for her dignity. She was determined to become an even more popular celebrity than Yun Shishir. This had become her ambitious goal. Of course, this was all in the future. On the other side, Yun Shishir, together with the two lads, and Mu Yaja, boarded a private flight to Norway for the first stop of the wedding photo shoot. On the day of Lu Jingtian's suicide, she happened to be on the plane with her phone switched off. Thus, she was unaware of such an earth-shattering incident in the entertainment industry. Qin Zhou had been busy assisting Ji Lin in dealing with Lu Jingtian's matter. Lu Jingtian's father, a senior executive of Huanyu, was unable to recover from the loss of his beloved daughter and was bedridden. Hence, after this incident, the funeral was handed over to Ji Lin to handle. Everyone in Huanyu was solemn and busy. Qin Zhou did not specifically inform Yun Shishir. After all, her wedding photo shoot was a joyous occasion, and he naturally did not want to dampen her spirits. Hence, he took some time out of his busy schedule to log on to Yun Shishir's Weibo and post his condolences. Of course, this time, he had learned his lesson. In order to prevent the previous blunder from happening again, he specially found a phone of the same model as Yun Shishir's and logged on to Weibo. The netizens did not question him. Yun Shishir was completely unaware of this matter and was still immersed in the joy of happiness. Mu Yaja told her that, in order to pursue perfection, they had specially selected several countries for this wedding photo shoot, such as Paris and Italy, which she yearned for. As a romantic country, Norway was naturally a good choice. The two little munchkins also wanted to go, so Yun Shishir brought the two little guys along. After all, they would be gone for a week, and she was worried about leaving the two little guys alone at home. In Norway he met with Mankey Harding. Mankey followed them throughout the entire wedding photo shoot trip. Mu Yaja had already finalized the schedule with him before this. Their first stop was Trolltunga in Norway. Trolltunga was a magical rock located in the Skjeggedal mountain in Norway. It was also translated as Giant's Tongue in Chinese. The reason why it was called Giant's Tongue was because the rock protruded far out of the cliff like a tongue, so it was called Giant's Tongue. Trolltunga mountain was steep. For the sake of scenery and safety, Mu Yaja used a helicopter to land directly on the mountain. As for Mankey, he climbed up another mountain in the distance to film the scene. On the beautiful Trolltunga, there were extremely stunning silhouettes. A total of 5 shots were taken, but for these 5 shots, the team went through a lot of trouble and put in a lot of effort. At first, when the helicopter landed, Yun Shishir jumped out of the helicopter. However, she was stunned by the spectacular and thrilling scene in front of her. It was too high. It was too steep. Chapter 2491. It was no wonder that this was one of the must-visit attractions for adventure enthusiasts. The rock wasn't big and could only accommodate a few people standing on it. If they wanted to climb up, they had to take the cable car to the mountainside and then climb up a flight of stairs. However, after going through so much effort to climb up the Giant's Tongue, the scenery was indescribable. If they climbed up on their own, they would definitely feel a great sense of accomplishment, right? Yun Shishir thought to herself. However, it would definitely be very dangerous. Muyaja said to her, perhaps, in the near future, this spectacular landmark will disappear. Yun Shishir asked curiously, why? Do you know how this Trolltunga was formed? Yun Shishir shook her head. He said slowly, the Trolltunga that is suspended in mid-air is the result of rock weathering. After a long period of wind, sun, and rain, the broken rock has been taken away, leaving only the hard part standing. Perhaps, as time passes, it will also fall off the cliff. The Trolltunga was formed more than 10,000 years ago during the Ice Age. The water flow from the melting glaciers eroded most of the rocks over the years and finally formed such a unique landscape. After the shoot, the group returned to the hotel. Yun Shishir was still immersed in the shock from earlier. The filming location in Norway this time was Muyaja's suggestion, so she naturally agreed. Along the way, she was still curious about the unique landscape in Norway. However, when she saw the Trolltunga with her own eyes, Yun Shishir was deeply shocked. After the trip ended, she still wanted to see more. How did you come up with the idea to film the Trolltunga? Yun Shishir couldn't help but ask curiously. I've seen it in a magazine before. Some mountaineering enthusiasts filmed it in a blockbuster. I was shocked, so I thought of it immediately. Muyaja paused and asked, why are you asking this? What magazine? Geographic magazine. Oh, Yun Shishir raised her eyebrows and looked a little surprised. So, you don't just read financial magazines? Of course. Muyaja couldn't help but flick her forehead and asked unhappily, am I that rigid in your heart? Yun Shishir covered her forehead and snickered. I just didn't expect you to pay attention to things other than work. Muyaja snorted coldly to show his displeasure. He wasn't going to tell her that after he decided to take the wedding photos, he had secretly scouted a lot of places, from Italy to Norway, from Paris to Prague, from Phuket to the Maldives. He had put in a lot of effort just to take the perfect wedding photos. Naturally, women were not the only ones who looked forward to wedding photos. Men also had many ideas. A woman in a wedding dress is the most beautiful. At the youngest and most beautiful age, she put on a holy wedding dress and became his wife. However, with the passage of time, no matter how beautiful her appearance was, it would eventually fade away. To him, a wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Hence, he wanted to keep this happiest moment as a memento. After a few decades, when their hair turned white and they gradually grew old, these happy moments would become precious memories and mementos. He would treasure her best years forever. Chapter 2492. At the thought of this, Muyaja gently kissed her sideburns. Wedding photos. Inside the cafe, when Song Enya suggested that they take their wedding photos as soon as possible, the expression on Mu Yenqing's face turned frostier. Suddenly, he tugged at the corners of his lips into a half-smile. It was hard to decipher the meaning behind his smirk. He picked up his coffee cup and took a sip before looking up at the woman opposite him with a mocking and playful gaze. Song Enya, who was sitting opposite him, felt a little uneasy and embarrassed by the man's nonchalant mockery. She snapped, "What are you laughing at? It turns out that Miss Song is quite sentimental, huh? Wedding photos." Mu Yenqing sneered again. "Why don't we just forego the wedding photo shoot? Such things are too pretentious. There's no point in taking them. Besides, you know very well why I married you. Don't you find it repulsive to have me stand next to you for a wedding photo?" With that, he shook his head. "Forget it. Isn't taking wedding photos one of the wedding procedures?" Song Enya said unhappily, "Since we're getting married, we naturally have to go through all the ceremonies and procedures. You know that I'm the eldest daughter of the Song family, so our wedding is very important. This is also the reason why I asked you out this time." Other than that, what about the wedding dress to wear on the wedding day? My mom said that we're only getting married once, so the wedding has to be grand and dignified. The wedding dress must be personally designed by a famous designer, and it has to be custom-made. Also, the accessories and jewels to go with the dress and the diamond ring must be of a larger size. It can't be too shabby. Song Anya was still fuming over the wedding gown incident. What right did Yun Shishir have to have so many custom-made wedding dresses? It's just a wedding, is there a need to have so many custom-made wedding dresses? Can she wear all of them? According to the shop assistant, some of those wedding dresses were for the wedding day, while others were for the wedding photo shoot. Brother Mu is really particular about this wedding. Even the wedding dresses for the photo shoot were custom-made for that *TCH to choose from. Choose. He might as well pick blindly. God knows how jealous she was. Therefore, when it came to her marriage, Song Anya was especially obsessed with a wedding dress, to the point of being morbidly obsessed. The more Mu Yanqing listened, the more impatient he became. Mu Linfeng had told him that it would be beneficial for him to have the Song family on his side. Song Anya, as a trump card, could still be put to good use. Hence, he wanted him to be more tolerant of her. At the very least, he was not to damage the harmony between the two families. As for Song Anya's conditions, as long as they could fulfill them, they should not make things too difficult for her. They should at least consider the Song family's feelings. Alas, now that things had come to this, the sight of Song Anya's rouged face was enough to make him lose his appetite. Just sitting across from her and looking at her made him feel uncomfortable all over. Alas, he was already tired of dealing with an unruly woman like Song Anya. This time, Song Anya had asked him to come over to discuss the wedding process. Mu Yanqing happened to have some free time, so he went to meet her. Chapter 2493. Regarding Meng Qingshua's matter, he had already discussed it with Mu Linfeng. The latter had relented, saying that as long as he married Song Anya, the muse would not have any objections if he were to marry a concubine after the situation stabilized. Mu Yanqing was overjoyed when he heard this. Hence, he was determined to find Meng Qingxue. He was very dissatisfied and angry with Meng Qingxue. What is this woman trying to do? She had mysteriously disappeared, mysteriously left his side, mysteriously disappeared without a trace. When she left, she did not bring much money with her. Where could she have run to? In the message, she told him that the child had been aborted. However, based on his understanding of her, he was certain that this woman would not abort the child. If she had really aborted the child, she would definitely not touch the money in the account. Before she left, she had withdrawn a sum of money from the account. It was not much, but he guessed that it was probably because it would be inconvenient for her to work when she moved to another city, so she needed a sum of money to take care of the baby. The child must have not been aborted. Mu Yanqing had been troubled by Meng Qingshua's matter. He did not know what kind of demon had possessed him to be distracted all day because of a woman. What a spineless person. On one hand, he hated himself for not being free and easy enough, and on the other, he hated her for being heartless. However, it was only after Meng Qingxue left that he suddenly realized that this little woman, who he had not taken to heart all this time, actually occupied such an important place in his heart. All along, he had not cared much about her because he was certain that she could not leave him. Other than staying by his side, she had nowhere else to go. It was because of this confidence that he did not seem to cherish her very much. However, when this little woman, who had always been delicate and naive, suddenly disappeared overnight and left him alone with the unborn child in her womb, he anxiously realized that he could also be so restless and anxious because of a woman. For a few days, he did not have a good night's sleep. In his half-awake state, he would always dream of her face. When he woke up in a daze, he always had the illusion that she was sleeping beside him. However, he hurriedly turned on the light and looked at the empty bed beside him. It was icy cold, and his heart was filled with an indescribable sense of loss. Where exactly did she go? There was no news of her. Even if she left a trace, it would be good. At least, it would give him a glimmer of hope. But this heartless woman had left in such a way that she didn't even leave behind a single clue. It made him look like an idiot, aimlessly searching for her. He didn't even know when he would find her. But now, he was going to marry Song Enya. Actually, to him in the past, it did not matter who he married. He thought that marriage was just a dignified procedure. It did not matter who the marriage partner was, as long as it was beneficial to him. Although the Song family could not be compared to the Lin's family, if the two families were to marriage was a marriage, it would definitely be able to resolve the imminent crisis for the Mu group as long as it was beneficial to him. For him, it would be of great help. Chapter 2494. When the time came, he could brazenly bring any woman he wanted back to the Mu family. His wife would not have the right to speak. However, once the wedding date approached, he suddenly felt that marriage was meaningless. After Meng Qingxue left, he tried going to nightclubs to hunt for women like he used to. However, looking at those women with heavy makeup, he suddenly felt that they were very foreign and distant, as if they were unreachable. He also felt that getting to know a new woman and starting a new relationship was an extremely tiring thing. Every time this happened, Meng Qingxue's charming smile would uncontrollably appear in his mind. She lay in his arms and smiled foolishly like a lazy kitten, which was very seductive. Yenqing, she reached out and hooked her arms around his shoulders as she muttered in her sleep. Mu Yenqing. An angry voice finally brought him back to reality. Mu Yenqing came back to his senses and saw Song Enya's angry face. Mu Yenqing, you're distracted. Didn't you hear what I said just now? What did you say? I said that my wedding gowns must be custom-made by a famous designer. It's best if there are 5 of them. 2 will be worn on the wedding day and 3 will be reserved for the wedding photo shoot. Can you do that? Her tone was almost interrogative and very impolite, as if she was giving an order. 5 wedding gowns. Mu Yenqing was quite shocked. This woman was really demanding an exorbitant price. He did not have the mental and physical energy to prepare these. It was not that he could not bear to spend the money on 5 wedding gowns, but he felt that it was unnecessary. Preparing these required not only time and money but also energy. He did not have the patience. Uncontrollably, he recalled the bits and pieces of Meng Qingxue. He vaguely remembered one time when she held his arm and watched a TV show with him. The show was about the style and design of wedding gowns. He said disapprovingly, "A wedding gown is just a procedure for a wedding. It's not worth paying so much attention to." Meng Qingxue pouted coquettishly. It's a girl's ultimate dream to wear a beautiful wedding gown and marry the person she loves. When he heard this, he could not help but ask, "Is this also your ultimate dream?" "Of course not." Pausing for a moment, she said, "My dream is to be with you. If we can get married, I'll feel very lucky. I'm not picky about the wedding gowns. They're simple designs. Even if they're not luxurious or expensive, I don't care." After saying that, she said very proudly, "Because I'll look beautiful no matter what wedding gown." He smiled and kissed her affectionately. "You sly little thing. If you like it, I'll get someone to customize it for you." "Really?" She happily asked, "Will you marry me?" However, he was stunned and fell silent for a moment. Meng Qingxue knew that she had accidentally touched his taboo. He had once told her that he had no intention of getting married when he was with her. Chapter 2495. Since this is your ultimate dream, I've made up my mind. If I can't marry you in the future, I'll give you a wedding gown and have it custom-made for you by a famous designer. What do you think? Meng Qingxue's expression dimmed when she heard this. She did not reply immediately, but a heart-palpitating disappointment appeared on her face. That expression was deeply engraved in his mind. Even now, he could not help but feel his heart ache when he recalled it. Her ultimate dream was probably not a so-called wedding dress, but a marriage partner. As long as it was him, it would be fine. If I really marry you, I'll definitely be so emotional that I'll cry at the wedding, right? She had once said this desolately. Mu Yenqing snapped out of his thoughts and suddenly mocked, 5 wedding gowns. Song Enya, you're really interesting. He raised his head and said, you know very well why we're getting married. We'll just go through the formalities for the wedding ceremony as an explanation to the songs. As for those custom-made wedding gowns, if you want them, you can get them yourself. Just put the cost of the custom-made gowns on the Mu Group's account. Song Enya said coldly, you seem to be very perfunctory about our marriage. Why? Mu Yenqing raised a brow and was equally aloof. You seem to be very concerned about it. It even gives me the illusion that you're using those despicable means to marry me. You. Song Enya was at a loss for words. After a moment of stalemate, she said hatefully, stop dreaming. I want to marry you. Ha ha. Mu Yenqing, this joke isn't funny at all. I just don't want to lower my status and wrong myself. Given the status of the songs and the muse, our wedding naturally can't be casual. It has to be grand and dignified. But you're not at all concerned about it. You're so perfunctory. From the beginning to the end, you're acting as if you're not involved in this matter at all. You don't have the awareness of being a fiancé at all. Mu Yenqing's lips tugged into a fake smile as he said coldly, Song Enya, I've already done all I can for you. His voice wasn't loud, but it was powerful enough. He even gritted his teeth as he spoke. Song Enya was stunned when she heard him say, you used unscrupulous means to marry me, and I suffered such a loss on account of the Song family. Now, you're talking to me about dignity and glory. Song Enya, you must know that I'm already doing you a huge favor by marrying you and giving you a proper status. At this level, you don't have the right to ask too much of me. Once you've gone through the formalities of marriage, you should stop while you can. If you talk about more conditions, I'll get impatient. Impatient? Are you that impatient with me? Or do you treat all women the same way? My attitude has nothing to do with you. Song Enya's eyes suddenly widened in anger. What about that Meng Qingxue, then? Mu Yenqing was stunned and stared at her in surprise. She continued to question, are you also so impatient with that Meng Qingxue? Startled, he asked anxiously, how do you know about her? Why do you care? Let me ask you, how do you know her name? Chapter 2496. Naturally, Song Enya would not tell her about how she had forced Meng Qingxue to back off as the empress that night. She took it for granted that, since Mu Yenqing would become her husband sooner or later, and she had no way out, she had to get rid of all the other women around him to strengthen her position as his legal wife. Hence, she acquiesced to his suspicions and said matter-of-factly, you're my fiancé and future husband. As your future wife, it's only natural that I investigate your past thoroughly. Otherwise, if some stray cats and dogs appear out of nowhere to mess things up when we're about to get married, even if you don't find it embarrassing, I'll find it very embarrassing. After saying that, she casually stirred the coffee, but her heart was filled with guilt. She had almost been exposed. In a moment of anger, she had spoken without thinking. She had been too impulsive. Ha ha. Mu Yenqing sneered and said expressionlessly, Song Enya, do you still have the cheek to say such things? I didn't even pursue the matter of your past deeds. Just the child in your stomach alone is enough for me to selectively ignore it and not pursue your past. If I were to pursue it, your history must be very interesting, right? I hope that you can keep the matter of artificial insemination a secret and not expose it to the public. Otherwise, the muse and songs will be embarrassed along with you. He paused for a moment to admire the lady's ashen face before he continued calmly. Speaking of which, I'm really impressed by you. It's not that I've never seen a woman throw herself at a man, but the things you've done are really impressive. In order to stick to Muyaja, you even went to the US to undergo artificial insemination. But, it's really hard on you. You fought so hard, but in the end, you fell to this point. You went through so much trouble, but you finally married into the Mu family as you wished. Now, I wonder if you're satisfied. Song Enya could not take it anymore. Although Mu Yenqing said these words with a smile, there was a hidden dagger in his smile. Every word he said was hurtful. She felt extremely aggrieved, but she had to pretend to be calm on the surface. She said sternly, Mu Yenqing, shut up. It's not up to you to comment on my affairs. Mu Yenqing laughed. All right, I won't gossip about your past deeds. However, please don't make irresponsible remarks about my matters. Song Enya, let's have a frank talk. After we get married, you just have to take care of yourself and not interfere with my private life. No matter what woman I find outside, it's not up to you to tell me what to do. Do you understand? Looking for a woman. The Missy flew into a rage out of humiliation. Do you know what you're saying? Mu Yenqing retorted coldly, you should know the Mu family's tradition, right? Once I become the official head of the Mu Jia, then I will have the right to marry a few concubines. Although she doesn't have an official status and her seniority isn't as high as yours, she can still enter the Mu family and live under the same roof as you. Since you've decided to marry into the Mu family, then you should be mentally prepared for this. Do you understand? No. Chapter 2497. Song Enya laughed out of anger. Mu Yenqing, you're really something. I haven't even married into your family, yet you're already making an agreement with me. Now you're talking to me about a concubine, and you're even brazenly saying it in front of me. What concubine? Do you think this is an ancient royal family? What era are we in now? We only have one wife, do you still want to have multiple wives? Impossible. I won't allow you to do that. He could not help sneering. Song Enya, you have no right to interfere in my affairs. As the young mistress of the Mu family, you only need to learn to be a virtuous wife after marrying into the family. You have no right to interfere in other matters. You? On what basis? He replied, on the basis that you're climbing up the social ladder and not marrying down. Song Enya was stunned. Climbing up the social ladder. How could she have forgotten that there was a distinction between marrying up the social ladder and marrying down the social ladder in the wealthy? In the olden days, when a woman of high status married a man of low status, it referred to the marriage of the emperor's daughter. When a woman of high status married a man of low status, it was a feudal society with a hierarchy of life. In feudal society, the average person had a hierarchy of status, officials had a hierarchy of ranks, and ethnic groups had a hierarchy of status. When a woman of high status married a man of lower status, it was called marrying down the social ladder, such as the Empress Dowager marrying down the social ladder, or the Emperor's daughter marrying down the social ladder. Song Enya was different. The Song family and the Mu family were climbing up the social ladder, so the Mus were not very satisfied with this marriage. Hence, most of them did not approve of it. Therefore, at this point in time, the Song family, who was already climbing up the social ladder, could not raise too many demands. Song Enya had high expectations for the wedding. Although the Mus wanted to take care of the woman's feelings, they could not accept all of it. For example, the conditions she raised were too harsh. Now that the Mus capital chain was tight, there could be a breakdown at any time. In other words, the Mus were ready to mortgage their assets for risky financing at any time. Mu Yenqing was naturally displeased that she was being so picky about the wedding. Anyway, don't dream of having an extravagant wedding. If you're so insensible, this marriage will be called off. I didn't want to marry you in the first place, but under second uncle's orders, I reluctantly accepted you and took you in. Giving you a status and a place to settle down is already a great favor. So, if you continue to be so picky, the Mu family won't accept it. Song Enya's face flushed red as her lips trembled violently. Her eyes were brimming with tears of grievance. Mu Yenqing rapped his knuckles on the table. Song Enya, as long as you know what's good for you, you might still be able to get by. But if you don't know what's good for you, even if you just got married, I can send you to the cold palace at any time. With that, he pushed away the coffee in front of him, stood up, stuffed his hands into his trouser pockets, and walked away confidently. His movements were a little violent. It was obvious that he wanted to show her some authority, so much so that the coffee on the table spilled out. Song Enya watched him leave, but she did not say anything to make him stay. After he left the private room and closed the door behind him, tears streamed down her cheeks. That's too much. Although she had high expectations for the wedding, it was definitely not something that was too harsh or difficult. For example, was it too much for her to ask for 5 custom-made wedding dresses? Chapter 2498. Both the Muse and the Songs were prestigious families in the capital. In ancient times, they were like princes. How could the wedding be shabby? Naturally, it had to be dignified. Brother Mu had ordered more than 10 wedding dresses for Yun Shishir to choose from. Was it too much for her to ask for 5 wedding dresses? Was it too much? To put it bluntly, Mu Yenqing did not care about her at all. Song Enya felt so aggrieved that she wanted to cry. She tried her best to hold back her tears, but they still fell uncontrollably. Even though she did not have many fantasies about the wedding itself, since she had decided to marry Mu Yenqing, marriage was not something that could be done on a whim. Marrying this man meant that they would be bound together for the rest of their lives. Instead of being enemies, it was better to slowly get closer to him. Even if they were just like her father and mother, who were hypocritical, at least in the eyes of outsiders, they should treat each other with respect. She had thought about it carefully. It was impossible to force herself to like Mu Yenqing, but it was possible to treat him as her real husband. After all, marriage was a long life. It was impossible to live it half-heartedly. However, once the two of them interacted in private, the smell of gunpowder would spread. At first, she tried to communicate with him calmly, but it did not work at all. Mu Yenqing seemed to be very impatient even when it came to the most basic thing of listening to her. This time, she had asked him out to discuss the wedding, how to arrange a dignified wedding, the marriage proposal, the betrothal gifts, the wedding photos, the wedding, all these needed to be discussed. However, not only was Mu Yenqing impatient, but he was also dismissive of her few requests. Song Enya was filled with resentment and grievance. She picked up the spoon heavily and stirred the coffee in her hand. Just as she was about to take a sip, she suddenly came to her senses and pushed the coffee aside in a fit of anger. She realized that pregnant women were not allowed to drink coffee. This coffee was casually ordered by Mu Yenqing. He really did not care at all. The flesh and blood in her stomach was his. No matter how it came about, at least it was his blood, but he did not seem to care at all. Coffee. Pregnant women were not allowed to drink coffee. Didn't he know that? Song Enya was at a loss for words. She gripped the tablecloth tightly as 2 streams of tears streamed down her face. In the past few days, she was exhausted. Although, in the circle of her close friends, she still looked high and mighty as before. When her close friends found out that she was going to marry into the Mu family, they were very envious. Those jealous eyes fell on her, but it made her a little unhappy. Although he was satisfied on the surface, his mood was downcast from beginning to end. Because she knew in her heart that even if it was an amazing marriage, it was not a happy one. She was confused and worried about her future. When Song Anya returned home, Jiang Qiming hurriedly went up to her when she saw her walking back in a daze. Where did you run off to by yourself? Why didn't you answer my calls? She was extremely worried when she saw Song Anya going out in the afternoon. She made several calls, but no one picked up. Nothing. Song Anya asked in annoyance. Noticing her mother's flustered look, she asked curiously, Mom, what's wrong? Why do you look so pale? Chapter 2499. At the mention of Lu Jingtian, Song Enya's expression softened and she replied nonchalantly, Oh, I thought it was something serious. I know that she got into an accident and got burned. She's in the hospital right now. I went to visit her some time ago, and the doctor said that she's recovering well. Even though Lu Jingtian was Song Enya's best friend, it was not as though she had a close relationship with her best friends in their circle. The two could only be said to be very close, but they were not close enough to confide in each other. Moreover, with so many things happening in the Song family recently, Song Enya was physically and mentally exhausted. Her mentality had undergone a huge change, and she no longer cared about anything. It's not about that. It happened a few days ago. Jingtian committed suicide by jumping off a building. Do you know about this? Song Enya nodded absent-mindedly. Suddenly, she came to a realization and widened her eyes. What? 5 days ago, she committed suicide by jumping off the rooftop of the hospital. Jiang Qiming said, the day after tomorrow will be the 7th day of her death. The Lus are preparing to hold a farewell ceremony for her. Are you going? This news came too suddenly, and Song Enya was not mentally prepared for it. She was dumbfounded. How is that possible? Mom, is this news accurate? Of course. Jiang Qiming said, I only confirmed this after reading the obituary published by Huanyu in the newspaper. Her farewell ceremony is the day after tomorrow. Since you're so close to her, you should attend it. But I can't, Song Enya hesitated. I'm getting married soon. It's taboo to attend a funeral and a happy occasion. It's fine if you don't go. It's not an important matter anyway. I'll call the Lus and tell them that you're not feeling well. Song Enya nodded. I'm not feeling well, I'll go back to my room first. Jiang Qiming chased after her. Have you had dinner? Do you want me to bring it up for you? Song Enya did not reply and walked up the stairs in a cold and cheerless manner. Jiang Qiming looked at her back worriedly and sighed heavily. That night, the sky was as dark as ink. A large bus slowly stopped at a bus stop. The door opened, and a woman carrying some simple carry-on luggage slowly got off the bus. The door closed and the bus drove away. Meng Qingxue raised her head and glanced at the bus stop sign. Yen City Central Platform. Yen City was a small town about 200 kilometers away from the capital. She took several buses, but she still didn't know where to go. However, she accidentally saw the name of the bus stop. Yen City. Yen City, Yancheng. She bought a ticket to Yen City. Before she got on the train, she bought some bread and water at the station to eat on the way. The 10-hour-long car ride was bumpy. Coupled with her early pregnancy reaction, she vomited out everything she had eaten. Fortunately, the few women in the car with her knew that she was pregnant and took special care of her. The journey was not too torturous. After getting out of the car, there was a village hostel on the opposite side of the road. Perhaps it was because of its history, 2 of the signboards were not lit up. Chapter 2500. She picked up her luggage and walked into the hostel. When she walked in, there was no one at the counter. After shouting for a long time, she finally heard movement from the small dark room. She's here. A middle-aged man walked out in slippers. When he walked to the counter, he was surprised to see a pure and beautiful young girl standing in front of the counter. Yen City was a very small city. It was so small that almost no one knew about it. Most of the people living here were born and raised in Yen City. Yen City was very small, poor, and backward. Therefore, only the people in Yen City would rush to the big city, but no one in the city would rush here. Unless they were visiting relatives. The boss looked at her and was stunned for a while. He had lived for so long, but he had never seen such a beautiful girl. Yen City was surrounded by mountains. The girls who grew up in Yen City learned how to herd cattle and sheep in the mountains. Their skin was rough from the wild wind in the mountains, and they didn't know how to apply any skincare products. Young girls were not much different from middle-aged women in their 30s or 40s. Their hair was messy, their clothes were sloppy, and they didn't care about their appearance. But this girl was obviously from a good family. She wore decent clothes, had a pretty face, and her skin was extremely good. It was especially so for her eyebrows, which were as exquisite as a painting. Even though she was barefaced and had only slightly drawn her eyebrows, she was still so beautiful that it was shocking. So beautiful. The boss sighed silently in his heart. Then he saw that Meng Qingxue looked thin and weak with a sickly pale face. He couldn't help but be curious. "Little girl, where did you come from?" Meng Qingxue didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked directly, "Boss, are there any rooms here?" The boss was startled and then said, "Yes." "Are you alone?" "Yes. Yes, I'm alone." "Judging from your accent, you don't seem to be a local. Are you here to look for someone?" "No, I'm just passing by. I'll leave early tomorrow morning." Meng Qingxue was alert and didn't say much to the boss. The boss had been running the hostel for so long and greeted all kinds of passers-by every day. Naturally, he knew how to read people's expressions. He knew that she was wary of him, so he didn't ask any more questions. "Take out your ID card for registration." Meng Qingxue immediately rummaged through her bag. Then, she suddenly thought of something. "If I use my ID card to register, will Mu Yanqing find me here?" At this thought, she trembled with fear. She looked up and forced a smile. "How can you go out without your ID card?" "Of course I'm an adult," she explained nervously. Meng Qingxue was speechless. "Are the prices here so cheap?" "It only costs 60 yuan a night. In the capital, a night's stay would cost at least 300 yuan. Chapter 2501. Could it be an unlicensed hotel? Her imagination ran wild as she took out 200 yuan from her bag and handed it over. The boss passed the room card to her. "Room 209 on the second floor. If you want to take a shower, run the tap for a while before the hot water comes out." "Okay." Meng Qingxue nodded. Just as she was about to turn around, a few shirtless young men came down from the stairs. "Boss, 2 packs of 24 Furong King." The boss replied cheerfully, "Okay." He took out 2 packs of cigarettes from the counter and asked, "How's the harvest tonight?" "Sigh, bad luck. I've lost so badly that I've almost lost all my wife's money." "How much did you lose?" 10,000 yuan. The boss was speechless. That's a lot." While they were talking, Meng Qingxue looked up and saw 2 bare-chested men with tattoos quickly walking down the stairs. Her heart skipped a beat, and she immediately became vigilant. She hid to the side, not daring to look at them. Judging from the appearance of the 2 young men, they were probably hooligans or something like that, right? They also spoke like a hooligan. In short, they weren't simple people. The 2 men also noticed her, and their eyes lit up. Seeing that she was dressed so beautifully, and it was so late at night, they naturally misunderstood her. "Boss, when did your family start doing this business? Why didn't you say anything? We were just worried about not having any fun." These men obviously thought of her as a prostitute. The boss couldn't hide his embarrassment and immediately explained, "Brother Dong, Brother Ching, you misunderstood. This is a guest of the hotel. It's not what you think." After saying that, the boss hurriedly gave her a look. "Go up quickly. Room 209 on the second floor. Don't get the wrong room." Meng Qingxue quickly nodded. She clutched her bag tightly and walked up to the second floor with her head down. One of the young men saw her frightened expression and then looked at her appearance. She was so beautiful that it was as if water could be squeezed out of her skin. In Yen City, it was impossible to find such a beautiful girl. The girls in Yen City had rough skin. Even if there were some good seedlings, they would be destroyed by the wind in the mountains. Most of the girls who grew up in Yen City started doing farm work when they were young. They worked in the fields, did laundry, and cooked. How could they be so beautiful? Out of the blue, he had evil intentions, so when Meng Qingxue was about to brush past him, he actually reached out to stop her. Meng Qingxue bypassed his outstretched arm and was about to walk towards the stairs. The young man was also hot-blooded. Seeing that he was slapped in the face, he actually bumped her with his shoulder. "Ah!" Meng Qingxue staggered and almost fell down the stairs. She wanted to protect the child in her belly and hurriedly reached out to steady herself. Her bag fell to the ground. The two young men looked at her bag. The zipper of the bag was not pulled up. Vaguely, through the open gap, she could see a stack of red RMB notes in the bag. Both of them jumped in fright. So much money. At least 10 to 20,000. Could this woman be the daughter of a rich family? When Meng Qingxue saw it, her face darkened. She hurriedly picked up the bag, hugged it to her chest, and hurried upstairs.